Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto was third son of Kaguya part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Otsutsuki Kaguya stood alone on the veranda of her palace, her ethereal figure silhouetted against the setting sun as she gazed off into the distance. Her porcelain skin was smooth and unblemished, and her long, flowing white hair cascaded down her back like a waterfall of ivory moonlight. Her eyes, devoid of pupils, reflected the light like two pools of silver. She breathed in the fresh mountain air, letting the wind play with her hair, lost in thought. With a deep sigh, she turned and made her way towards the grand sliding doors that led inside, her every step graceful and effortless. A wave of her hand caused the large sliding doors to open of their own accord. She glided through the hallways, her flowing white robes trailing behind her like clouds. The palace was empty, as it usually was, except for a handful of servants who dared not speak to her unless she spoke first. She reached her sitting room and sank onto a pile of plush pillows, her hair splaying out around her like a white halo. But despite her regal appearance, a deep sense of unease seemed to weigh on her. They will come eventually within 3,000 years, she murmured to herself, her voice low and melancholic. Her delicate eyebrows knitted together in a frown, betraying her inner turmoil. She shook her head, banishing the thoughts that plagued her mind. Now was not the time for such musings. Yet, her mind couldn't help but drift to her past mistakes. She remembered her ill-conceived plan to use the kaminoki, a dangerous weapon, to turn the world into an army against her family. The memories left a bitter taste in her mouth, and she frowned with regret. Looking back, she knew her plan had been foolish. But it had taken her own children pointing out the obvious flaws in her panic-driven idea. After all, Otsutsuki consumed hundreds of kaminoki from countless worlds, so trying to use the power of just one against their combined might was futile. At the time, however, she had been insistent that it would work, and had even grown angry when her children had seemingly opposed her. Her eldest, Hagoromo, only a young boy at the time, had been unfazed by her outburst and had calmly posed the question, how easy would it be to destroy every human on the planet? She had answered without hesitation, utterly confident in her immense power as the avatar of this world's kaminoki. But it was the looks on her sons' faces that finally made her realize the true magnitude of her madness. If she could destroy an entire race with a single fruit, as weak as she was, it didn't matter what she did. Her family would easily obliterate the planet. The realization had hit her hard. Kaguya smiled slightly, her eyes raised to the sky overhead, her vision unobstructed by the palace. The verity of the matter is, I harbor no desire for the annihilation of humankind. For they are a singular race, imbued with a plethora of emotions, such as love, hope, and resilience. She reminisced on her extensive voyages with her kin, where she had encountered numerous civilizations, before they were destroyed. Eventually, the revulsion she felt had become too overpowering, causing her to flee across the expanse of galaxies. Although this world too is rife with enmity and suffering, it is the presence of these ills that allows for the emergence of felicity. One cannot bask in the light without first enduring the darkness. A voice came from the other side of the ornate doors. Mother, may I come in? Kaguya recognized the voice and smiled. Yes, my dear, she answered in a gentle tone. The doors opened and her son, Himura Otsutsuki, walked in and bowed to her. Himura was an impressive sight to behold, standing tall with his pale skin and distinct features. He had a unique appearance with his hairless brow ridges, white hair, and small, horn-like protrusions on his forehead. His bangs were short and hung to the left side of his face, while a chin-length lock draped over the right side. One could not help but notice his piercing gaze, as he inherited his mother's renowned Byakugan in both eyes. Himura was dressed in a light, full-length kimono with a striking pattern of 6 black magatama around a high collar, which accentuated his pale complexion. His dark pants provided a contrast, completing the ensemble. A sword in its sheath was strapped to his left hip, suggesting his readiness for battle. At just 17 years of age, Kaguya's precious son was already an imposing figure with a commanding presence. Mother, dinner is ready, Himura announced. Kaguya raised an eyebrow. I thought we had servants for such trivialities. Why did you come personally, my son? Himura's cheeks reddened with embarrassment as he spoke. I prepared dinner myself, he admitted sheepishly. Kaguya's face lit up with joy and surprise, her radiant beauty shining through. She stood up gracefully and glided across the room to embrace her son, causing him to freeze in shock at her uncharacteristic display of affection. He quickly recovered and hugged her back, basking in the warmth of his mother's embrace. Since her panic due to the impending Otsutsuki attack had been quelled, Kaguya had become more open and attentive to her duties as a mother. They were still working to prepare the world for the future, but they were also spending time together as a family. Lead the way, my son, Kaguya replied with a soft smile, allowing Hamura to take her hand and guide her towards the dining area. As they entered, they found Hamura's brother, Hagoromo, already seated at the table, engaged in conversation with a small orange frog with a purple bead hanging from its neck. A small white snake sat beside the frog. Upon noticing their arrival, the animals bowed respectfully to Kaguya. Kaguya's smile widened as her son led her to the head of the table, pulling out the chair for her to sit in. She thanked him, but her attention was drawn to the absence of the usual servants. Her senses expanded, confirming that they were alone in the palace except for the animals and people in the room. Hamura-kun, she started to ask, but her son interrupted. Don't worry about it, mother, I dismissed the servants for the day. Just sit back and enjoy, he said confidently, anticipating her question. Kaguya nodded, pleased that her son was taking charge and trying new things. She watched as he walked towards the kitchen, and was surprised to see 3 semi-transparent versions of him separate from his body before becoming solid. Together, they disappeared into the kitchen. Kaguya couldn't help but feel proud of her son for his newfound independence. As effectively royals amongst the humans, they had been sheltered from the everyday interactions of regular people, but it seemed that Hamura was determined to change that. She settled back in her chair, reflecting on her past and the fear she used to inspire in the people of the world. But she had changed since then, thanks in part to her son's influence. They had urged her to connect with the people and shed the persona of the rabbit goddess. Her efforts had paid off, in a manner of speaking, and now the people loved the goddess for her kindness. As she waited for the meal to be served, Kaguya watched her eldest son chatting with the 2 small creatures, a snake and an orange toad named Gamamaru and Hakuja. It was heartening to see her eldest forming relationships with them. She remembered how she had met them and dubbed them summons. Flashback. Kaguya gracefully floated a few feet above the lush grass, her sons Hamura and Hagoromo walking ahead of her. They were in a hurry to reach the meeting place requested by the leader of the talking toads. It had been a year since Kaguya had come out of her panic, and her sons had been busy exploring the world and discovering new things. One day, Hagoromo had come to her, excitedly telling her that he had found a talking toad that wanted to meet with them. Kaguya was intrigued and decided to join her sons on this adventure. As they hurried towards the meeting place, Kaguya couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and anticipation. She had always been curious about the world and the creatures that inhabited it, and this meeting promised to be a unique experience. As they reached the meeting place, Kaguya landed gracefully on the ground beside the rock, her 2 sons with her. Hagoromo appeared to be searching for something, while Hamura stood by her side, patiently waiting. Despite her amusement at her eldest son's frantic search, Kaguya felt content just being with her sons. She could sense Hagoromo's thoughts, and knew he didn't want to disappoint her by bringing her out here for no reason. But for Kaguya, just spending time with her children was enough. Kaguya smiled and addressed her son affectionately, Hagoromo-kun, have you tried using your eyes? She held back a laugh at his perplexed expression, while Hamura nearly fell over laughing. Hagoromo clearly didn't understand what she meant and thought she was teasing him. To help him out, Kaguya activated her family's Byakugan with a thought, and the veins around her eyes only lightly pulsed. She grinned at Hagoromo's expression as he realized what she meant and began looking extremely embarrassed for not having thought of that himself. A moment later, Hagoromo's Byakugan pulsed, and he gained near limitless 360 degrees vision. Hamura's Byakugan activated a second later, and they soon found the orange toad leaping toward them from a distance, clearly hurrying as fast as it could. They patiently waited and watched him hop through the trees before coming to a stop on top of a waist-high rock. The frog bowed deeply as he spoke, my apologies for being late. Please forgive me. Kaguya's brow furrowed, and she said gently, no need to bow, little one. Gamamaru nodded and introduced himself, I am Gamamaru, leader of the toads. Curious, Kaguya asked, how are you able to speak? I have been here for many years and never found creatures that could talk like you. Gamamaru settled into a more comfortable position and explained, there are many groups of creatures on this planet. We have been here for ages and developed the ability to talk and use nature chakra. We have our own homes and stick mostly with our species. The only interaction we toads have are with the slugs, snakes, hawks, and dragons. Hagoromo interrupted, why are we only meeting you now? Why have I never seen any other talking creatures? Gamamaru replied, you've never seen us because we hid when your mother ate the fruit of the Kaminoki. We were afraid of her power and feared what she might do with it. Kaguya apologized, I deeply apologize for that. I'm sure my anger and fear could be felt for hundreds of miles. Gamamaru shook his head, seemingly dismissing Kaguya's apology. You were afraid of the return of your family, it is only natural. Kaguya was startled, how could you know that? Gamamaru revealed then that he received a prophecy that concerned Kaguya, her children, and her family's eventual arrival for the Kaminoki. As Gamamaru spoke, the Otsutsuki family hung on his every word, their attention entirely focused on him. The toad had a grave expression on his face, his voice taking on a slight shift as he prepared to deliver the prophecy that pertained to them. In return for sharing this prophecy with you, as representative of all the groups of speaking creatures, we request that you create us a home, a permanent home away from the world of humans so that we may expand and grow without infringing on the growth of humans. Kaguya's eyes widened as she quickly processed everything. He has information that can help save this world and the humans. All he wants in return is a home for himself and his kind. I can do that. I can create such a place, Kaguya spoke, her voice steady and confident. You will all be moved to another dimension, a habitable place that has its own nature chakra. But to get from that world to this, you will create summoning contracts. Hagoromo will distribute these to the humans, and you will help them when they summon you. Gamamaru agreed to her terms, and Kaguya wasted no time in demanding to know more about the prophecy. Gamamaru quickly obliged, his words sending shockwaves through the family. You are going to have another son, he began, causing Kaguya and her son's eyes to widen in surprise. How can I possibly have another son? Kaguya exclaimed, unable to comprehend this news. The Kaminoki, as you may know, the god trees, are sentient entities. The one on this world wants to survive just as much as you do, and is contributing to it. When you ate the fruit, the process of the child being formed began. This boy will be part Otsutsuki and part Kaminoki, the first of his kind. Hamura's and Hagoromo's jaws hung open in disbelief, their expressions reflecting their shock. However, Kaguya managed to compose herself better than her sons, despite the gravity of the situation. This boy won't be human and as such will not be born as normal humans are, Gamamaru continued, staring directly into Kaguya's eyes. Kaguya-sama, do you know how long it takes for a Kaminoki to fully grow? Kaguya's eyes widened as she realized what he was saying. High, around 9 jitos, or around 6,000 human years, she answered, her voice barely above a whisper. Gamamaru nodded solemnly. It won't take the boy that long to form, around 3,000 years, Gamamaru said, a deep sigh escaping his lips. Kaguya-sama, his birth will kill you. Flashback end. Kaguya allowed herself to drift away into a sea of memories as Hamura, accompanied by his clones, entered the room with plates of delectable food. She gracefully acknowledged his gesture of hospitality with a nod and a smile, her mind still wandering. After her conversation with Gamamaru, she had been true to her word. Utilizing the power of her Sasra copy wheel eye, she had teleported all the various talking species to a new and habitable dimension, dubbing them summons and forging contracts that enabled her to summon them whenever she so desired. Hagoromo had taken charge of overseeing their needs, ensuring that they were able to build their homes and flourish in their newfound sanctuary. The small toad had chosen a colossal mountain, which they named Mount Mayaboku, and the entire toad clan had settled there, thriving under the watchful eye of their benefactor. As Kaguya nibbled on her food, she winced as an intense pain gripped her stomach, causing her to curl in on herself. This was no ordinary childbirth. The creation of this son had taken an immense toll on her yokai, and the strain was clearly visible on her face. Despite the agony, she knew that she could not give up now. This child was precious to her, and she was willing to endure any amount of pain to bring him into the world. Mother, are you all right? Hamura's voice was laced with concern as he knelt beside her, his hand reaching out to comfort her. The summons and Hagoromo looked on with worry etched on their faces, aware of the gravity of the situation. I'm sorry, Hamura, but please take me to my room. Kaguya's voice was strained, but determined as she fought to keep her composure. Hamura quickly nodded, his chakra enveloping her as he lifted her up and floated her through the house to her room. He fetched a wet cloth and laid it against her forehead, hoping to ease her discomfort. I love you, mother, he murmured softly as he held her hand, his eyes brimming with tears. He knew that this was a difficult time for her and remained by her side, unwilling to let her face it alone. Hamura's face was etched with a deep sadness as he thought about the prophecy that he had heard. His younger brother, who he would never get the chance to meet, would be born soon, but would not be fully formed for thousands of years. By that time, he and his brother Hagoromo would have long since passed away, leaving no one to care for the child. As he thought about the future, Hamura couldn't help but sigh. Everything had changed after the meeting of the summons. Gamamaru had revealed to them the shocking truth that the birth of his brother would lead to their mother's death. But even more devastating was the fact that her immense power, without her alive to control it, would wreak havoc on the planet and could potentially destroy it. The weight of this knowledge was heavy on Hamura's shoulders, and he knew that they had to act quickly to prevent this catastrophe from happening. But how? How could they possibly stop the power of their mother, who was already so far beyond their comprehension? As he pondered this question, Hamura felt a sense of foreboding settle over him. The fate of the world rested on their shoulders, and failure was not an option. Gamamaru had warned that he and Hagoromo needed to overcome Kaguya's power and seal it away, but the toad was uncertain of the consequences of their actions. As the impending battle loomed, Hamura and his brother trained tirelessly, honing their skills and abilities with their mother's guidance and the toad's instruction in senjutsu. Kaguya's face contorted in pain, her body racked with agony. Despite it all, she managed to offer her son a reassuring smile. "I love you, my son. Don't worry, I'll be okay," she gasped. Hamura's frustration boiled over, and he shook with anger. "No! You won't be okay! You're going to die!" he shouted, his voice raw with emotion. As the contractions subsided slightly, Kaguya managed to compose herself and spoke in a soft, calming voice. "Hamura-kun, my dear, I have accepted my role in the prophecy. I don't want to leave you and your brother, but I am proud of the men you have become. I am confident that you will take care of each other when I am gone." Her grip on the silk blankets tightened, and she took a deep breath before gesturing for Hamura to come closer. Pulling him into a hug, Kaguya said, "Thank you for your promise to take care of me after my death. I won't ever forget that, my son." Hamura began crying into her shoulder, holding her tightly as he cried. She rocked him back and forth slowly, comforting him. "I don't want to lose you, mother," Hamura sobbed. Kaguya pulled him closer to her. "Be strong, my son. Take care of the humans for me, please." Hamura nodded, pulling away and rubbing his eyes. "Thank you for dinner, Hamura-kun. I'm sorry for not being able to finish it," Kaguya said with a weak smile. "Don't fret about it, mother, I understand," Hamura replied, trying to smile back. He looked at his mother, her once vibrant beauty now faded and weakened by illness. The reality of her impending death hit him hard, and he couldn't bear the thought of losing her. A young man cautiously walked into a grand, elegantly decorated room. It was dimly lit, with the only source of light coming from the flickering candles in the corner. On the vast, luxurious bed lay a woman, her skin pallid and her eyes pupilless. On each side of her head were two brownish horns. "I'm here, mother," the young man said worriedly as he approached the bed, noticing the strain in his mother's neck and the sweat pouring down her face. "Where is Hamura-kun?" she questioned, her voice strained and barely audible. Suddenly, she tensed and thrashed against the bed. The young man quickly rushed to his mother's side and tried to comfort her. "All the preparations are finished, Ka-san," Hamura said as he swiftly entered the room and made his way to the other side of his mother's bed, placing his hand on her hot forehead. He tried to relieve the pain. Over 3 years had passed since Kaguya's initial warning about her impending death. Her sons had been preparing for this moment ever since, training and strengthening their abilities. Now, as they watched their mother's condition deteriorate, they couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. "Listen to me, my sons, Hagoromo-kun, Hamura-kun," she started, obviously in great pain. "There are many things I need to tell you before I pass on." Both of her sons looked at her intently, Hagoromo holding her hand, and Hamura wetting a cloth to put on her forehead. She smiled proudly through the intense pain she was feeling throughout her entire body as she looked at her two beautiful sons. They meant the world to her. Hagoromo with his spiky, shoulder-length, pale brown hair, a chin-length, braided lock hanging in front of his left ear. Both he and his brother had a pair of horn-like protrusions extending from either side of their foreheads and pupilless white eyes, like her. She grimaced as a wave of pain struck her, and she tried to curl inwards on herself. The pain was so intense she was on the edge of screaming. With extreme force of will, she forced the pain back down, focusing on her sons' worried faces. "Don't worry, mother, we will not fail," Hagoromo said firmly, his voice thick with emotion. He looked at his mother with tears in his eyes, feeling powerless to help her as she suffered in pain. Despite his best efforts, her condition had only worsened, forcing her to stay in bed. He and his brother had done everything in their power to alleviate her pain with the help of their slug summons, but it seemed to be of little use. Hagoromo and Hamura gripped their mother's hands tightly, their faces etched with concern as they watched her struggle with the pain. "Hagoromo-kun, complete your dream, spread Ninshu to the world," Kaguya said, her voice strained. "And Hamura-kun, don't spend your entire life just protecting my body. I want you to be happy and have a family too." She grinned at the disgusted expression on Hamura's face. He had always been against the idea of getting married, but Kaguya had managed to persuade him otherwise. "Don't worry about me, my sons. I haven't told you this, but the Kaminoki has promised to look after me. I'm not going to suffer," she reassured them before another wave of pain hit her. This time, the pain was so intense that Kaguya screamed and thrashed on the bed, her hair whipping around wildly. As she gave birth to her third son, a massive release of chakra exploded from her, causing her to rise off the bed. Hagoromo and Hamura tried to hold her down, but it was no use. The medical ninja that Hamura attempted to use had no effect, and Kaguya's life force was rapidly fading. With immense effort, Kaguya managed to control her breathing and push the pain back. He is born. I will soon die, and the Jubi will break free. It will attack you, using my body, to reclaim its chakra, she said, her voice weak but resolute. She clenched her fists so hard that her fingernails dug into her palms, drawing blood. But the pain eventually subsided, and Kaguya was able to speak again. I have faith in you, my sons. You have trained hard, and you are both strong, she said, looking into their eyes. Hagoromo's eyes were filled with determination, his 3 tomos shining brightly within his red eyes, while Hamura's pupilless white eyes reflected the same unwavering resolve. Prepare the world for my family's arrival, lead the humans. I do hope they will not descend into war, she continued, her voice growing weaker by the moment. Suddenly she coughed up blood, staining her robes and chin. Her 2 sons rushed to her side, trying desperately to help her. Your brother will defend us all from the Otsutsuki murderers. He shall save us all and lead us to a bright future. His name will be Naruto, Kaguya said, her voice barely above a whisper. She paused for a moment, gathering her strength before bringing her shaking, sweat-covered palms together. With my last breath, I create my 4th and final son and bring him into reality, she exclaimed, her voice strong and filled with determination. Banbutsu Sozo. With that, she roared, pouring every last ounce of her yokai and strength into this ultimate jutsu. Hagoromo and Hamura watched in awe as a black blob with 2 glowing yellow spots formed between their mother's hands. Suddenly, Kaguya let out a piercing scream and fell back against the pillows. Her skin grew pale, and she slowly began to lose all color, her body expanding until it became a sphere on the bed. Hagoromo and Hamura watched in stunned silence as their mother's body transformed, and they could feel the enormous chakra radiating from the white sphere. Run! She's turning into the Jubi. The urgent warning from the black blob jolted the brothers into action. It bolted across the ground and vanished into Hagoromo's sleeve. The brothers quickly sprang into action, rushing out of the palace to join the forces they had gathered outside for this very moment. They were greeted by a motley crew of creatures led by Gamamaru and his fighting toads, arranged by size from the smallest to the largest. Joining them were massive slugs, snakes, and 3 Genryu, the earth, water, and lightning dragons. The creatures tensed, ready for battle, as they watched the palace with apprehension. It has begun, Gamamaru declared sagely from atop a giant battletoad, his webbed hands forming a seal. The creatures looked on as Hagoromo's black shakujo materialized in his hands, and his eyes transformed into the Mangekyo Sharingan. Hagoromo was startled by a sudden burst of power by his side. Turning, he was amazed to see his brother wreathed in light blue flames, levitating off the ground with 5 truth-seeking balls floating behind him. Oh ho ho, been hiding something, little brother? Hagoromo teased, his Susanu's dark blue ribcage forming around him. Can't let you have all the fun, can I, brother? Hagoromo's brother chuckled before refocusing on the palace. Suddenly, the ground trembled with incredible force. The roof of the palace was hurled into the air, and a giant, earthen-colored humanoid emerged from the dust, appearing to be decaying. The massive creature was clad in a robe and had numerous spike-like protrusions on its back. May the Kaminoki watch over us! Hamura exclaimed as he and his brother led the charge against the giant creature. The being that had once been their mother rose to its full height, towering over all but the largest summons, and let out a deafening roar. That is the Jubi's first form. You can only defeat it by sealing it, the black blob spoke from within Hagoromo's sleeve. Understood. Little brother, if you can contribute to this battle, do so. Otherwise, stay safe, Hagoromo commanded as he leaped into the air and unleashed an 8-story tall fireball at the beast. The battle that ensued was nothing short of cataclysmic. The sheer force of the opposing sides shattered the ground, sending massive boulders and debris flying in all directions. The air crackled with electricity, and the sky was filled with smoke and fire. The toads, slugs, snakes, and dragons fought valiantly, their roars and screeches echoing across the land. For 7 long days, the battle raged on. Summons fell left and right, their bodies battered and broken. Hamura himself came close to death, but it was this brush with mortality that sparked something within his brother. Hagoromo's eyes, once Sharingan, now evolved into the Rinnegan, the most powerful dojutsu in existence. With this new power, he unleashed a flurry of devastating attacks that turned the tide of the battle. His chakra swirled and pulsed with an otherworldly energy, and the summons fought with renewed vigor. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the beast was defeated. With a mighty roar, it collapsed to the ground, defeated and spent. Hagoromo knew what he had to do next. With a single hand gesture, he sealed the beast's essence within himself, the weight of its power almost too much to bear. But what to do with the body of the beast? Hamura had originally planned to bury it and build a temple above it, but now he had a different idea. He would create a new world, one where he could live with his family in peace. With his own powerful dojutsu, the Tensigen, he created a livable atmosphere on the moon, and he and his family eventually moved there to start anew. From there, he vowed to watch over the earth, to create a race of pure Otsutsuki who would keep a vigilant eye on the Gedo Mazo and wait for the inevitable invasion of the Otsutsuki from space. Hagoromo and Zetsu agreed to this plan, and so it was done. The newly christened moon became a symbol of hope, a shining beacon in the sky that would forever remind the people of the sacrifices made in the great battle. A lifetime later, Hagoromo lay on his bed, his once powerful body now frail and weak. His left eye was yellow and his skin was pale, indicating the severity of his condition. Zetsu, his faithful brother, was by his side, using his chakra to keep Hagoromo alive long enough for him to deliver his final message to his children. The Biju that Hagoromo had created from his mother's chakra, along with Amura, gathered around his bed, their concern for the legendary sage of 6 paths evident on their faces. "I am not long for this world," Hagoromo said weakly, his Rinnegan fixed on his children. "I have one final request for you all." Saiken's voice was filled with concern as she asked, "What is it, Otasama?" "I was given a prophecy," Hagoromo said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I wish to share it with you all before I go to the Jodo. Come closer." Hitomi and her siblings moved closer to their father's bed, while the Gobi hopped onto the foot of the bed so that Saiken could get closer. Hamura stood by the head of the bed, switching out the wet cloth on his brother's forehead, while on the right side were Hagoromo's 2 human-born sons, Indra and Azura, watching silently. "My mother had 4 children," Hagoromo said, causing confusion among the Biju. "Her 3rd son, Naruto, is the child of her and the Kaminoki. His birth killed my mother, but we knew that it would." The Biju looked at each other, stunned. They had no idea that Kaguya had given birth to another child. "Because he is the son of the Kaminoki, it will take him thousands of years to form," Hagoromo continued. "My children, all of you and Zetsu are immortal, and I want you to watch for my brother. Find him, care for him, and train him, for he will protect us against the arrival of the Otsutsuki. Do this for me, my children." The tailed beasts nodded in unison, lowering their heads in respect to their father. "Hi Otosan," they said in unison. Hagoromo smiled weakly at them before breaking out into a coughing fit. "Wait for him, for he shall take care of you, my children. Good luck," Hagoromo said quietly before his one visible eye closed, and his body relaxed. Zetsu slowly slid off Hagoromo's body and formed into a blob on the bed. "He has gone to the Jodo," Zetsu said quietly. "Junsuna tochi de haiwa o mitsukuru kodo jie dekimasuka," everyone said in unison, paying their respects to the passing of the legendary sage of 6 paths. Thousands of years later, the harsh desert winds whipped sand into the faces of the couple as they trudged wearily through the endless expanse of barren terrain. Their home lay just beyond the horizon, a faint glimmer of hope in an otherwise bleak and unforgiving landscape. As they walked, the woman suddenly stopped in her tracks, her ears perking up to the sound of a faint wail carried on the wind. "Do you hear that?" she asked her companion, turning her head in the direction of the sound. "It sounds like a child crying." Following the sound, they stumbled upon a scene that left them both stunned. A small infant, with pale skin and horn-like protrusions emerging from his forehead, sat abandoned in the scorching sand. His eyes were pale, almost pupilless, and his frail frame trembled in the relentless heat. The woman felt a pang of compassion for the helpless child. Who would abandon a child in the desert like this? She questioned, her voice full of emotion. "He's sick, and he's all alone. We can't just leave him here to die. No matter how strange he looks, he deserves a chance to live." The man hesitated at first, taken aback by the child's peculiar appearance, but he could not ignore the pleading look in his wife's eyes. They scooped up the infant, cradling him close to their chests, and continued on their journey towards home. As they walked, the couple could not help but wonder about the child's origins. Who would abandon a child with such unusual features? What kind of family would cast him out into the merciless desert, left to die a slow and painful death? Their minds filled with questions, the couple resolved to care for the child as if he were their own. Little did they know, their decision to bring the infant home would set off a chain of events that would forever alter the course of their lives. A small boy walked down the sandy streets of Sunagakure, the buildings made of earth towering over him, blocking the moon and making the shadowy alleyways even darker. The child was unfazed by this, being used to the gloom. He continued calmly walking. He was around 6 years old, had shaggy longish white hair, pale skin, and 2 small horns coming out of his forehead, one on each side of his forehead. The boy was wearing light brown deteriorating rags as clothing, covered in dust and sand. White, pale pupilless eyes took in his surroundings as he left the alleyway. He was searching for food once again. It had been a while since he last ate. He came upon the market of the village not long later, the smell of fresh food leading him. Upon entering the area, they immediately spotted him. "It's the Shiroi Oni, white demon! Get him!" one villager yelled, pointing at him. The young boy frowned, watching as some braver villagers rushed toward him, while the majority backed away in fear. The white-haired child stared emotionlessly at the villagers as they approached him, not trying to run. As the villagers got close enough to hit him, brandishing knives and kunai, dark brown vines covered in leaves burst violently out of the surrounding ground. The vines extended menacingly. Swinging through the air, they wrapped themselves around the villagers tightly, squeezing them slowly and painfully. "Let me go! You damn demon!" one of the villagers cried, struggling as hard as he could, trying to cut the strong vines with his knife. The nearby residents looked on in fear at the pale-eyed child, who walked past the restrained villagers to an abandoned stand. Once he reached the food stand, he grabbed several rolls of bread before calmly walking away. "Let us go!" a trapped villager yelled at his receding form, drawing his attention back to them. The horned 6-year-old turned and looked over his shoulder, one hand outstretched toward them. The boy looked hesitant, unsure what to do. "Let them go, Naruto, they're morons, not worth it." The white-haired boy pivoted sharply and saw the owner of the voice. A very tall man, who had 2 distinctive, red markings on the right side of his face, the only visible part of his head. The rest hidden by his turban-like headgear and by a sheet hanging from it on the left side of his face. He wore the standard attire of a Sunanin, complete with a forehead protector and flak jacket. The now-named child nodded, relaxing his arm and letting it fall to his side. As he did so, the vines holding the 5 villagers loosened and slid back into the sandy ground, disappearing altogether. The entire market plaza was silent as the villagers coughed from having their air supply cut off. Naruto walked away from the area, fading into the gloomy alleyway. The shinobi who had arrived watched the child leave. Exhaling, he turned to the villagers to berate them for antagonizing the child yet again. "Fools! You're lucky I was here, or you would all be dead," Baki thundered. They trembled from his killing intent and the anger in his voice. "But it's a demon!" One of them apparently didn't care about his killing intent, yelling back at him in outrage. "He may well be one, and if he is, do you honestly think you can kill him?" Baki deadpanned, glaring into the foolish villager's eyes. The man faltered as he realized his own idiocy. "Morons, even we shinobi can't kill the boy, some have tried. Besides, the Kazekage has ordered for the boy to be left alone. Do you understand?" Baki yelled at everyone present, who all nodded in fear at the killing intent he was leaking. Good. Baki disappeared in a swirl of sand to report this newest incident to his leader. With Naruto, one could see a boy, sitting on one of the many rocks that stuck out from the village's massive sand and rock walls, slowly eating the bread he stole. Naruto's pale eyes gazed over the sandy, and usually hot village. It was late at night, and Naruto needed to find a safe place to sleep again, the last spot discovered a few days ago and booby-trapped in an attempt to kill him. Naruto cringed as he remembered his life, what his purpose was, who were his parents, why did the plants protect him? Why did he look so different from everybody else? No one else in the village had white eyes, white hair, or had horns growing from their head. He also had unusually pale skin no one else in the town did, and besides growing up in the hot desert sun, he never tanned like everyone else. Regardless, Naruto was grateful for the plants that protected him from harm. They hadn't always been there, but since that day, they had been around keeping anyone from harming him. Flashback. Naruto was 3 years old, playing in the living room of his family's house. His Kasen was at the kitchen stove preparing lunch. He watched her with joy in his heart as she stirred the pot. Her long sandy brown hair flowed over her shoulders and down her back. He grinned as she looked over at him with her light brown affectionate eyes. "Go wash your hands, Naruto-kun," she ordered. He nodded hastily, setting down his toys and rushing off to the bathroom. She smiled as she saw him go. Even though he differed significantly from all other children, she cared about him passionately. His pale eyes and horns had terrified her in the beginning. They'd been walking home from a visit with the family in a nearby village when they found baby Naruto laying naked in the sand crying. She'd decided that she would keep him and adopt him, as he was evidently abandoned. Curious as to why he had such pale skin, horns and weird white hair, but it didn't matter to her. Both she and her husband were concerned about Naruto being seen negatively in the village. Because of this, they didn't let the boy play outside, and he didn't have any friends. They were still debating what was to be done. She grimaced. Okay, sometimes they did take Naruto out in the village. 2 weeks ago she had taken Naruto with her to the market like usual, making sure he wore a hood to cover his features. Naruto had excitedly walked along beside her holding her hand and asking questions about everything. It had surprised them when he could talk, read, and write from a young age. As they walked down the market area to get food, a boy ran past them, possibly to his mother with something he wanted to buy, and tumbled into Naruto, knocking him over and his hood slipped off. Everyone nearby had frozen as they took in Naruto's strange features, the horns, and white eyes, the uncharacteristic pale skin. She had swiftly put his hood back on and left the square, dashing home. Since then she hadn't taken Naruto back out, but rumors about how he was a demon and evil moved about the village. She was frightened for her boy, but as long as she kept him inside he should be safe. "I'm done, Ka-san," Naruto called as he rushed down the hall to the dining table and hopped into his seat. His pupilless pale eyes showed his joy at getting to eat, and she chuckled at his ecstatic expression. He's always loved eating, she mused with a smile. "Here you go, Naruto-kun, eat up. Two-san should be home soon," she said, putting a plate of food in front of him that he dug into with gusto. She sat down in her own seat and began eating. A couple of moments later there was a loud crash at the front door and indistinct yelling. "Stay here, Naruto," Maebe ordered sternly, getting up and moving to the door. As she got closer, she could make out what was being said. "Let us in. We know the demon's in there." Someone yelled in anger loudly. She heard another pounding sound. "No! Go away!" Her eyes widened as she heard her husband respond, shooting to the door. She opened it. She could see her husband's back and 4 angry villagers brandishing weapons standing on their doorstep. Opening the door had been the wrong thing to do, for as soon as she did the foremost villager punched her husband in the face, knocking him into her and both of them onto the ground. "Let's go, boys!" One cheered as they filed into the house. Maebe tried to stop them but received a kick to the face. "KSN!" Naruto's distraught voice cried out. She looked up at the entrance to the living room and saw Naruto standing there, eyes wide in fear and shock. "Run, Naruto!" She yelled at him, but it was too late. One villager grabbed the boy and hurled him into a wall. "Kill the demon!" one shouted as he stabbed a knife into the child. Oyakawa was dazed from the punch but fought through it when he heard Naruto's scream. Getting to his feet, he rushed the men, leaping and tackling the one who'd stabbed his son. He noticed from his close proximity that they were all drunk. "What?" the man yelled before his head struck the floor. "Hey! How fucking dare you!" one man yelled. Swinging his short sword, he sliced into Oyakawa's back, who released a yell in pain. The adrenaline still pumping through him to defend his son, he jumped back up, ignoring the pain, and leaped at the man. It was the wrong move. The drunk man moved the sword between them and Oyakawa impaled himself on the sword. "Tiu-san! And oh!" Naruto cried as his father coughed up a ton of blood. The man who had stabbed him grinned and punched his father away before turning to Maebe, who was shaking uncontrollably. Naruto tried to crawl to his father, his mind not realizing what was happening, the pain in his arm making it hard to think and move. "Naruto!" Naruto turned his head and saw his mother over him. His blank eyes didn't understand what he was seeing for a frozen moment in time. Time seemed to resume as his mother coughed up blood onto his face. It was only then that Naruto processed the sharp metal edge coming from his mother's chest. It was only then that Naruto saw the maniacal grin of the man behind his mother, holding the handle of the sword. "Ha ha 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 ha! This is what you get for caring for a demon!" The man laughed. The 2 of the other men laughed with him. While the last one thought this maybe wasn't a good idea, he suddenly realized they'd just committed murder. Kakashi Naruto's eyes were wide and his body frozen in shock. Maebe smiled sadly at him, fighting to stay alive, protecting Naruto with her body. "Run, Naruto-kun, and remember I will always love you," she whispered, the light leaving her eyes before she collapsed onto of Naruto. Naruto was frozen in shock, the blood on his face sliding down into his clothes. "Time to kill the demon," the man with the sword cried, sliding the sword out of his mother with a sickening noise and kicking her dead, lifeless body aside. Naruto's mind shut down, unable to process all of this in his albeit intelligent but still 3-year-old mind. He did nothing, frozen in shock as they approached him and beat him, stabbing him and cutting his skin deeply. They enjoyed his screams, dragging their weapons through his skin. Naruto curled up into a ball as they took to kicking him repeatedly. Suddenly they stopped, the pain dulled and faded away. He could feel someone, their sorrow, they were sorry. Naruto didn't understand, but he felt his bruised and beaten body supported by something soft. Opening his eyes, he found himself in a cocoon made of plants and vines. He watched with wide eyes as barbed vines broke out of the floor and walls, Almost angrily, the plants cut through his attackers and killed them, their screams only lasting for a few moments. Naruto passed out after that, unable to process the death of his family, the death around him, and the excruciating pain in his body. End flashback. Naruto shook his head, finishing the last bite of the bread. He had woken up after that in a cell. The man he came to know as Baki introduced himself. Naruto had been scared, and the plants had responded to his fear, his want to escape. The thick, thorny vines had tried to kill Baki, who had only barely got away, though he gained a thick cut across his chest. After that, the plants had attacked the cell wall, breaking it down rapidly and pulling him through. Naruto had run until he found a park, vanishing inside the shrubs he had hidden for days as he dealt with everything. He'd cried for days, the loneliness he'd felt that day had never gone away. All he could think about was his mother and father dying, but he hadn't been entirely alone. The plants had wrapped around him comfortingly, caring for him, warming him and providing shelter. That had been 3-ish years ago, and since then he'd learned to survive, get food and shelter for himself. There had been several assassination attempts from villagers and shinobi alike, but the plants had always dispatched them with ease. The Kazekage, leader of the village, had noticed him and ordered his men to stop attacking him, though it didn't really prevent the villagers. Naruto sighed, hopping off the rocky ledge tens of feet from the ground. Free falling for several seconds, he was caught by plants that extended from the dirt, creating a soft landing for the young white-haired boy. Naruto rubbed one vine affectionately, deeply glad for them and the protection they gave him. I wish one day I could understand my life. I don't feel like I fit in here. I don't belong here. Naruto thought as he walked once again through the darkened alleyways. Before long, Naruto reached one of his favorite areas in the whole village, one of the few locations with actual plants. The Suna greenhouse. The first time he'd come upon it, he had immediately broken through the wall with the help of his plants, and stayed inside for some time before the shinobi found him. Naruto grimaced. They had not left him alone, continually trying to get him to leave. Several shinobi had died in the attempt. They hadn't used jutsu though, afraid to damage their precious plants. Eventually, the Kazekage had come and allowed him to stay there when he wished, as long as he didn't harm the plants. Naruto didn't trust the man. He was shifty, and Naruto didn't feel any warmth from him. Regardless, he was going to take up the man's offer once again. Naruto walked through the near abandoned streets. The few villagers out this late gave him a wide berth, averting their eyes or glaring at him. It didn't matter to Naruto, no one liked him, and he knew that. For some reason, he didn't feel a need to get their approval. Before long, Naruto reached the wall of the greenhouse. Trying to communicate with his plants, he succeeded in creating a couple of vines that lifted him over the barricade, softly depositing him on the soft, lush grass of the greenhouse. Naruto quickly hurried to his favorite spot, the roots of a large tree. Curling in a small ball and attempting to wrap his decaying rags around him, he started to go to sleep. A few moments later, a wooden dome began to form around him before encasing him inside in safety from those that may want to do him harm. A week later. Nighttime was once again upon the village, but it had only been a few hours since the sun fell. Naruto honestly preferred the night. It was cooler, and the sun beat mercilessly upon his unprotected skin. The small boy rubbed one of his horns absent-mindedly. It helped calm him down, he'd found. Naruto was sitting on top of the dome-like part of a 3-story building. He believed it was a restaurant. Naruto stared up at the full moon in the sky. He could feel some sort of connection to it. It made him feel better when he saw the moon. Why am I so alone? Who are my real parents? Why did Ka-san and Tu-san have to die? Naruto had so many questions, and he felt it was a recurring theme. All questions and no answers in his life. It bothered him, but at the same time, he was patient. He knew the answers were coming somehow. One day something would reveal them to him. He didn't know how, he knew, just did. Naruto's pale eyes latched onto a family walking down the street below him, the mother holding her son and daughter's hand as the father held their daughter's hand. They all looked so happy. I want that happiness. Where is my family? Naruto sighed. Even though Ka-san told me they found me in a desert, abandoned. Why do I feel like I can feel them? More questions. Roar! Naruto turned toward the roar and the explosion that preceded it. His eyes widened as he saw a massive sand creature, covered in blue markings. Its one tail flailing about wildly, crushing nearby buildings with ease. The beast roared something out, but Naruto couldn't understand it. He could hear the screams of nearby villagers and saw the shinobi leap across the rooftops toward the creature. Intrigued, Naruto began toward the beast, his progress much slower than the shinobi, as he had to wait for the plants to form pathways across the roofs. As Naruto ran toward the creature of sand, he watched it create a giant wind sphere and fire it at several buildings, destroying them. As Naruto got closer, the beast suddenly turned to him and stared directly at him. The beast's eyes were wide, and it began cackling madly. "You're finally here." "Yes, yes, yes," the beast roared out, confusing Naruto and everyone nearby. The apparently crazy monster began to hop around in apparent joy, its tail flying around randomly. Naruto watched as its tail sent a building flying right at him. The ever-protecting plants grew out quickly en masse from the street below and nearby buildings, latching on to the flying two-story building. It took the thick vines several moments before completely stopping the building and dropping it to the ground. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the beast. It had attacked him, and while he didn't care that it was killing the villagers that attacked him, he didn't want it to destroy his greenhouse. Deciding to stop the beast, he threw both hands toward the sand creature. Said sand creature's eyes were wide as he saw that it upset the boy. It hadn't meant to throw a building at him. The next moment, mass amounts of plants grew from between the buildings. Tons of vines that moved through the air menacingly flew toward the sand creature. "Ah, crap," was all the beast got out before being covered in the plants. Feeling his chakra draining, he released his control over his host, shrinking rapidly and returning inside the young red-headed boy that was his host. Naruto watched the beast disappear and recalled his plants, transporting himself quickly to the large crater it had formed. All the nearby shinobi had watched the entire ordeal, wondering what would happen when both the demons of the village met. When they had seen the Shiroi Oni, white demon, arrive, everyone had backed up quickly. The Kazekage stood on a nearby roof, watching in extreme interest. He wouldn't stop the white-haired child if he were to kill his son. Something that he was already attempting to do. The pale-eyed boy would actually be doing him a favor. As such, he ordered his men to stay back, knowing if he sent them in, Naruto would most likely kill them anyway. To be honest, I'm not particularly interested in fighting the kid anyway. He doesn't kill anyone as long as no one bothers him, and he is a valuable asset to my village. The Kazekage mused. He hoped to someday control the child and make him a shinobi. With Naruto, he had just reached the red-headed boy, who had black outlines around his eyes. Naruto tilted his head as he watched the boy wake up, his hair shifting, and Naruto noticed the kanji for love on his forehead. The red-headed boy apparently noticed him, his eyes open in shock. It surprised Naruto as sand rose around the boy menacingly before flying toward him. Naruto didn't move, and he wouldn't have been able to dodge fast enough either. Before the sand reached him, a large tree branch that shot out of the ground swatted away it. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the boy, realizing he was the same age as him. It annoyed Naruto that he had attacked him, but maybe he will be my friend, he's like me. Naruto couldn't explain it, but he felt familiar with the child. "What is your name?" Naruto asked, the plants receding as the sand did. "Gaara, why does mother want me to trust you?" "Who are you?" Gaara asked, shakily getting to his feet and looking back at the strange boy with horns. Naruto's face showed his confusion. "Who is mother?" "And I am Naruto." "Mother is inside my head, she protects me from the people who try to kill me," Gaara stated, color starting to come back into his face. "Do you want to be friends? You are like me, I don't know how, but you just are. I feel like I know you." Naruto trailed off, staring into Gaara's eyes. "Friends?" Gaara asked in shock, the restless sand around him finally settling down. "Yeah," Naruto said brightly, walking toward Gaara. Scared of the boy, he backed up, but what astonished him was how the sand didn't attack Naruto. It seemed to even move out of his way. "Trust him, Gaara, he will help you, he will be your friend. You don't have to be alone anymore." A voice reverberated in Gaara's head. "Mother?" Naruto reached out his hand, patiently standing in front of the red-headed boy. Gaara stared at him for a moment before shakily lifting his, and they shook hands. "I don't know what being friends means, but I'm sure I can learn," Gaara stated as they both observed each other, a small smile on both their faces. Gaara could feel a connection to Naruto. He couldn't describe it, but he somehow knew he'd found someone who would be his friend, someone he could trust. "I don't know either, I've never had one. But let's learn together, Gaara," Naruto said with a growing smile. Within Gaara's seal, the Tanuki grinned. "He's finally here. Am I the first one to find him? I'm awesome." He laughed happily. Finally, his Aji-san had arrived. "I should stop torturing my host, I don't want to escape now." In the real world, Gaara and Naruto were walking together away from the crater. Gaara was leading Naruto to his house, and Naruto was saying that he didn't have to, that he was okay. Gaara was adamant though, insisting that Naruto should live with him. They had plenty of room after all. The massive Tanuki smiled as he could feel Gaara's determination. He didn't want to lose his new friend. "Gaara, I am sorry for how I have treated you. You can sleep now, I will not try to escape anymore." The sand creature knew he had really messed up with his host, and he hoped that he could rebuild it with the boy. Outside the seal, Gaara stopped in shock, staring off into space, which concerned Naruto. "Gaara?" Are you okay? Naruto asked, standing a bit ahead of his new friend. Yeah, just that mother said I could sleep. Gaara's voice conveyed his shock at that. Naruto raised an eyebrow, confused at his friend's statement. She doesn't let you sleep? Naruto asked, visibly upset that his friend couldn't sleep. No, mother has never let me sleep before. Every time I do, she tries to escape. Gaara shook his head and began walking again. Naruto walking beside him as they continued toward Gaara's home. Doesn't sound like a very kind mother to me, Naruto muttered, but Gaara heard him and nodded. Within Gaara's mindscape, the Tanuki cringed. He had a lot to rebuild with the boy. I'm sorry, I just wanted to escape, and Naruto's arrival made me realize that I shouldn't have tortured you. It wasn't your fault. Hi, Gaara said, speeding up as they moved through the streets. There were only a few villagers visible, ones that were coming back to see what happened. Upon seeing both demons together, they turned tail and ran for their lives, scared out of their minds. One demon was more than enough to kill hundreds of people. Both could probably level the village. Gaara, where do you live? Naruto asked, wondering where they were going. The Kazekage mansion, Gaara replied, turning on the street. The next moment the mansion came into clear view. Naruto's jaw dropped open in shock. Wait, you're the son of the Kazekage? Gaara nodded. I would not call him my father, he's tried to kill me multiple times. Naruto had no response, understanding his friend's emotions and the distinct lack of them. Keeping his peace, he followed his friend up to the front double door. Are you sure me staying here is okay? I will make it okay. Gaara's voice held a level of danger and Naruto was touched, glad that Gaara would be willing to stand up for him even though they just met. Naruto smiled as they walked inside, the massive doors closing behind them with a resounding clang. 4 months later. The Kazekage sat at his office desk, the room around him plain, containing only the bare essentials required to complete his job. He worked through the paperwork that directly needed him to read it. The council or secretaries handled a lot of the everyday paperwork. He picked up one sheet from the council. It detailed their thoughts on his son, and the horned boy Gaara had become friends with. The Kazekage had been extremely surprised when Naruto became friends with his son, and it had changed many things in only a few days. At first, he had been against Naruto living in his house, which had resulted in him having to dodge his son's sand as it leaped at him. Naruto had quickly intervened, resting his hand on Gaara's shoulder. He calmed him down with ease, and Gaara retracted his attack. He had watched in amazement as the white-haired horned boy calmed down his son from his rage, something no one had yet been able to do besides Yashimaru before he had ordered him to kill Gaara. Naruto was able to calm him down, and was going to leave, something that Gaara was clearly very against. He changed his mind at that moment, and in hindsight he was pleased he did, allowing Naruto to stay. Since then many things had changed in the last 4 months. Gaara was able to sleep for some reason, and his usual insanity was not present. While Naruto was a strange one, he found him to be very intelligent and observant. Though Naruto clearly didn't like him for his attacks on his son. Temari and Kankuro, his 2 other children, had been deathly afraid of Naruto in the beginning, flat out avoiding him as much as possible. Temari had told him that she was scared of Naruto, but surprisingly Gaara had been the one to encourage them to get to know Naruto. They were all slowly becoming friends, and he was glad that he now had a way to keep Naruto under his control. Naruto's incredible control over the plants reminded him of the first Hokage's Mokutan, but different, and he had a sneaking suspicion of why Naruto's eyes were pupilless. Shaking his head, he turned his attention back to the sheet in his hand. The council had suggested that Naruto, once he was old enough, be entered in the academy along with his children. It also expressed their confusion at what exactly Naruto was, but they had mostly agreed that it didn't really matter as long as they could harness Naruto's power for the village. The Sand Village was after all one of the weakest of the Great Five. With Naruto. Naruto sat cross-legged in the living room of his new home. In front of him was a wooden go board. It was being supported on the side in front of him by plants, while on the other side where Gaara sat it was being propped by sand. Naruto had come up with this game of sorts for them as it taught them both strategy and control of their abilities. They wouldn't actually touch the pieces on the board and would instead try to use their respective powers to move the pieces on a tiny area without breaking the board. Interesting move, Naruto commented in his usual calm near melodic voice. He manipulated a plant vine to wrap around a piece before moving it to retaliate to his friend's strategy. Naruto himself wasn't entirely sure why he'd come up with such a tedious way for them both to play. He felt this need to get stronger and train, that he was going to need power in the future. I can feel the answers coming, they are getting close, Naruto thought. On the nearby couch sat Gaara's 2 siblings. Temari was oblivious to the world buried deep within the scroll on wind that she was reading. Kankuro, on the other hand, was watching them both with deep interest, mainly Naruto. Kankuro had been extremely afraid of Naruto in the beginning, seeing that Naruto's powers were eerily similar to his younger brother's sand defense. But he had come to like Naruto, and they got along pretty well. Kankuro, being older, had begun teaching both of them how to throw shuriken. I have to thank Naruto again for becoming friends with Gaara. Since he did, I have actually been able to have a relationship with my brother, Kankuro thought, watching as the two boys concentrated on their board game. Naruto looked very different from how he did when they first met him. He had moderately shaggy white hair, which was somewhat long. His bangs were short and hung to the left side of his face, with a chin-length lock which hung from the right side of his face, and his two horns parted his hair somewhat. Naruto's pale eyes had creeped him out in the beginning, but he'd gotten over it. Naruto also had ashen skin which never tanned no matter how much sun he got. He has the hairstyle of Hamura Otsutsuki and Tonari Otsutsuki combined, but still the same facial structure as Naruto, minus whisker marks. Naruto's clothes had also changed from the rags that he had worn 4 months ago. Gaara had insisted that Naruto wear proper clothes. Naruto had nothing wrong with that, and both had gone shopping, taking a good deal of money with them from the house the second day after Naruto came to the mansion. Kankuro and Temari had feared Naruto and Gaara back then, and were just happy they were out of the house. I'm willing to bet they probably had to threaten someone to give them Naruto's new clothes, Kankuro mused, as people were still terrified of them, now calling them the Demanju, demon duo. Naruto had chosen clothes that were similar to the garb worn in Suna, but with his own style. He had selected a white kimono, pale green sash, and black sandals. Kankuro honestly thought he looked pretty good in it. I win again, Gaara and I-san, Naruto said, laughing at Gaara's annoyed expression, having lost yet another game to his friend/brother. Gaara and Naruto had decided to become brothers as they felt this unexplainable bond between each other. Want to go again? Naruto asked, and before Gaara could answer, Kankuro cut in. You guys want to go out and eat? I'm hungry, what about you? He asked. I'm fine with that, what about you, Gaara? Naruto stood up and stretched, the plants holding up the board sliding back into the ground. Let us go, Gaara replied in his usual straight-to-the-point tone, lacking its usually threatening undertone. Naruto had helped Gaara deal with the insanity that had been slowly consuming him, and being able to sleep probably helped too. Kankuro nodded, and they left the room, leaving Temari engrossed in her scroll. They quickly left the large mansion, arriving on the street outside. People spotted them and backed away, scared of the two demons with their brother. No one dared threaten them. The demons were perfectly capable of defending themselves, and it was now illegal to bother either of them. The trio ignored the looks and made their way to one of the more popular restaurants in town. So Naruto, what are you planning to do later on in life? I know me and Gaara, as well as Temari, will be enrolling in the academy, Kankuro said, turning toward Naruto as they walked. Naruto's pale eyes turned to him, and Gaara was paying attention, wanting to know what his friend planned to do. When does the academy start? Naruto questioned, at 8 years old. Was Kankuro's reply. Most likely I will join you at the academy unless something changes. Naruto trailed off, gaining a thoughtful look on his face. Naruto and I-san, can you please explain why you seem to think something is coming? You keep referring to something, Gaara asked, his curiosity evident in his voice. I don't really understand it myself, Gaara. I have this feeling that the answers to my questions are coming. I don't know how else to explain it, Naruto replied. How is Shikaku today? Naruto asked, looking toward Gaara. Sleeping again, it's almost all the lazy raccoon does, Gaara said and suddenly winced. Okay, he's awake. Naruto grinned. Yelling again? Yeah, Gaara replied, holding a hand to his head. Gaara's relationship to the tanuki within his head had improved dramatically. Shikaku had pulled him into his head a week after meeting Naruto and introduced himself, apologizing for trying to break out all the time and torturing him. Shikaku had explained that he wasn't his mother, and had gone on to tell Gaara the true story of his mother, and how she loved him. Gaara had gone into a rage, wanting to kill his father for lying to him and genuinely losing any sort of caring he had for his father. Naruto had been the only thing that prevented him from attempting to kill his father, which he was grateful for, not wanting to lose himself to his emotions, as well as possibly dying. He wasn't strong enough to kill his own father after all. Shikaku had told Gaara his name and promised to take care of him. Gaara had surprised the tanuki that day, asking if they could be friends. Gaara at the time still didn't fully understand the meaning of friends, but he wanted to be friends with the beast regardless. Do you have to yell all the time, Shikaku? Gaara complained, only causing the mischievous raccoon to grin and yell louder about absolutely nothing. Gaara muttered, holding his head with both hands now in a way that was reminiscent of his insane rages. Naruto raised an eyebrow. You know you can cut the connection to Shikaku, right? He did say you could do that. Gaara facepalmed before cutting the connection to his insane inner demon. Thanks. Naruto nodded. Ah, we are here, Kankuro said, and so they had. Reaching the front doors of the restaurant, they walked in and found a table. The villagers within saw them but kept quiet, letting them be. It was a couple of moments before a waiter came to their table and quietly laid out menus for them. Naruto picked up his and browsed, ultimately settling on barbecue. Gaara got rice and Kankuro had some ramen. Giving their orders to the silent waiter, they waited patiently for their food to arrive. So Kankuro, how is training with puppets going? Naruto asked, gaining Kankuro's attention. The young boy's expression became excited. Awesome! Puppets are so cool! Lady Chio is training me, and while I'm rather bad at some things, I think I'll become a great puppet master one day. Kankuro replied ecstatically. Naruto smiled. You said you were learning to connect chakra to the puppets? Naruto asked, a grin on his face. Yeah? Can you connect one to that lady's drink? Kankuro smirked as he caught on to Naruto's plan. Oh yeah, easy. Do it. A nearly invisible string shot out of Kankuro's finger and flew through the air until it latched onto the glass of the lady a couple of tables over. Kankuro waited until the lady went to grab her drink before moving it out of the way. Naruto and Gaara to an extent burst out laughing while Kankuro fought to keep down his laughter at the lady's shocked expression. He needed to concentrate on keeping the connection to the glass. The lady went for her drink again, and he moved it just out of the way once more. Her expression became angry, and she continued to grab for the glass. By the time she realized it was Kankuro's doing, Naruto and Gaara were laughing hard. Kankuro could see her rage at the prank in her face. It was amusing to see it quickly disappear as the woman realized just who was sitting at the table. Two of the Kazekage's children, and the boy who had killed countless villagers is enough to stop anyone in their tracks. Kankuro turned back to the table as the waiter arrived with their food and they dug in with gusto. 1 week later. Hey Naruto, here are the scrolls you asked for, Temari said, handing the horned boy a bag full of scrolls. Thank you, Temari, Naruto replied, taking the bag from her and sitting down on the couch. Naruto had decided he needed to have at least a basic understanding of chakra and shinobi life before he enrolled in the academy. He had the free time, and this was a productive way to spend it. Gaara sat in the middle of the living room mat a few feet off, sand swirling in a mesmerizing pattern around him. He had his hands held apart as he attempted to form his sand into different complex shapes as fast as possible, finding it immensely entertaining. At first, he created a sphere, then a square, triangle, kunai, shuriken, sword, book, bowl, knife, and then a spoon. Temari smiled as she watched her sibling and his friend go about their activities, Gaara working hard to get a better understanding of his sand and Naruto reading intently. You two don't mind if I invite a friend over, do you? Naruto looked up from his scroll at Temari, seeing her unsure expression. I'm fine with it, Naruto replied before returning to the scroll. Gaara stared at her oddly for a moment before a small smile came to his face. Sure, Temari Wani-san, he said before returning to shaping his sand into a castle bit by bit. Temari smiled at the irony, Gaara making a sand castle. He'd have never even thought of something like that 4 months ago. Nodding, she made her exit, heading toward her friend's house to invite her over. A couple of hours passed as Naruto continued to read his scrolls. Gaara eventually moved outside and practiced throwing shuriken at the targets in the backyard. Naruto was distracted from his reading by the sound of the front doors opening. Laying down the scroll, he stood and moved through the halls. He was curious as to who Temari had brought into the mansion. Usually, no one beside him and Gaara's siblings were in the estate. Yes, Gaara's father was here, but they rarely saw him. Walking through the doorway into the entrance hall, Naruto spotted Temari talking to her friend who looked somewhat scared. It was a girl around their age with dark brown hair, almost black. Her hair was shoulder length, and she had hazel eyes. She was wearing a kimono similar to Temari's. Upon seeing him, the girl froze and stared at him, taking in his strange features. Naruto stood calmly, watching as Temari reassured the girl that he wasn't dangerous. Once she had calmed down, he spoke. Hello, my name is Naruto, nice to meet you. He gave a small bow to the girl. Hi, my name is Chinami Koki, and nice to meet you. The girl replied, much calmer than she was before but still scared of the pale boy. Naruto nodded before walking in his normal, almost royal gait across the hall toward the kitchen and disappearing in the doorway. See, he's not that bad. Gaara is much better too, Temari said. Her friend shakily nodded. He's much nicer than I thought he would be. Kasen said he was a demon who wanted to kill everyone. She replied, stronger now. Told ya, they are wrong. Naruto-san is just misunderstood. He only defended himself against people who attacked him for being different. Temari said, come on, let's go play. Hi. With that, they both rushed up the stairs to Temari's room. With Naruto. Oh, hi Kankuro, Naruto said, seeing Kankuro eating some snacks at the kitchen table. Hi Naruto, just came back for some lunch since Lady Chio gave me a break, Kankuro replied, stuffing some more food in his mouth. You still going to wear that silly cat uniform? It's not a cat uniform. Naruto said, moving to the fridge and getting out some food to eat. Naruto sat down beside Kankuro and continued to tease the boy about his fashion choices for the rest of the time Kankuro was there. After Kankuro left, Naruto returned to his scrolls and continued reading, finding Gaara napping once again on the living room couch, the sand wrapped around him like a blanket. Naruto chuckled. Gaara loved sleeping like nothing else after not being able to sleep for so long. In fact, Gaara was usually violent if woken up before he wanted to. When Temari had tried it once, Gaara's sand had pushed her away, wanting to stay asleep longer. Naruto grinned as he remembered that day. They had an outing planned at the park, and it was time to go. Temari had asked for his help, and he'd slid a vine through the covers, slipping past Gaara's sand and tickling Gaara mercilessly until he woke up. Naruto chuckled. Leaning back on the couch, he picked up where he left off in the scroll. Chakra is created when two other forms of energy, known collectively as one stamina, are molded together. Roughly 6 years ago. Konoha. Namake's Minato stood by the bedside of his wife, who was thrashing on the bed in the throes of giving birth. Minato squeezed her hand and placed his other against the clearly weakened seal on her stomach. Channeling chakra into the seal, he held it together for a while longer. They had been at this for 5 hours so far, and he was struggling to keep the QB sealed. They were in the Namake's estate that was a ways off from Konoha, deeper into the land of fire. It was just him and his wife, Uzumaki Kushina, here in the building, which was a large 3-story compound, looking like a smaller feudal lord home. He had surrounded the building in many powerful seals to prevent those within the village of Konoha from feeling the evil chakra that was the QB's, as well as to keep people out. Minato was the Yondaime Hokage of the village hidden in the leaves. He had married his wife, Kushina, in secret to prevent her from being used as a way to get to him. The only people that knew were a couple of Kushina's friends, Minato's sensei Jiraiya and Sarutobi, the last Hokage. Minato had a sense of foreboding, and he offered a quick prayer to Kami in hopes nothing went wrong with the birth of his son. He focused more chakra into the seal, squeezing Kushina's hand in support. I'm going to kill you, Minato. I'll neuter you with a freaking spoon! Kushina screamed, nearly crushing her husband's hand. Minato's sweat dropped at his wife's yell, but he didn't respond. Instead, he stroked her hair as she continued to work to bring their son into the world. You are doing good, princess. Almost there, Minato reassured his wife. Ah! The fiery redhead screamed as she gave one final push. Minato released his wife's grasp and used both hands to lift up their child. Minato held the frail infant gently as he grabbed a blanket and wrapped the surprisingly silent child in it. As Minato slowly rocked the small boy, he noticed the 6 whisker marks, 3 on each cheek. It must be from Kushina being the QB Jinchuriki, he mused. Please give him here, Kushina rasped. Exhausted as she was, she still wanted to hold her child. Minato paused his thoughts and carefully handed their baby to his wife. He noticed that the infant had yet to open his eyes, which concerned him. His name will be Nakata, like we decided, Kushina said, much more firmly now that she cradled her child in her arms. The newly named Nakata cooed and snuggled closer to her, causing her to hold him tighter. Kushina and Minato took this time to observe their newborn child and smiled at their baby boy. He had the 6 whisker marks, beautiful tan skin and crimson spiked hair, the color of his mother's hair and the style of his father's. When the boy finally opened his eyes, his parents were amazed at their bright violet coloring. Kushina smiled brightly. Haha. Minato-kun, he looks more like me than you. She yelled loudly, having won the bet with her husband. Minato smiled happily, uncaring that he lost. I now have a son, something I thought I would never have. He has my face though, Minato countered, but Kushina wasn't paying attention anymore. Kushina tickled her son lightly. I am so happy to have my son in my arms, Kushina rejoiced. Pulling her son closer, she rubbed noses with her child, eliciting a soft giggle from the small boy. Congratulations, Kushina, you have brought our son into the world, Minato said, leaning on the bed next to his wife and smiling as he caressed the top of Nakata's head. Minato turned and looked at Kushina, who could only be described as a red-headed beauty with long smooth crimson red hair going all the way to her waist, and violet eyes. She smiled at Minato as she slowly rocked their son back and forth. Hello, Sochi, Kushina said to Nakata as she stared into his intelligent violet eyes. Minato turned to his son, pride clear on his face. Welcome to our family, Nakata. Rest Kushinaheim, I'll go wash Nakata, and check to make sure that he's okay, Minato said. He reached for the newborn to go give him his first bath. As he carried his son toward the door, Kushina smiled as she watched them go, and then laid back exhausted against the bed. The fiery redhead stared up at the ceiling, a peaceful, delighted smile on her face. Things had been rough up to this point in her life, but she finally had the family she had always wanted. Her precious Nakata was here in the world, and she would take care of him. He will not have to go through the suffering I had to in my life, she thought with determination, the memories coming back to her. She didn't remember as much as she'd like about her family, the Uzumakis. She was sent to Konoha to be the new Jinchuriki as Mito got older. Her clan had been wiped out a couple of years after her coming to the village hidden in the leaves, and she was still afraid she was the only one left. She had felt so alone those days, the last of her clan. She'd been kidnapped by Iwa Jounin one night. Apparently they wanted to learn the secrets to the Uzumaki's incredible life force. Minato had rescued her, and that had been the beginning of their relationship many years ago, though it was kept secret for her safety. I finally have my son, and he looks so much like me. I'm so gonna spoil him. Going to buy him treats and toys. Kushina thought happily, slowly relaxing her tensed muscles, the exhaustion setting in. She was ripped out of her thoughts as she heard a tremendous crash. Not a second later the wall to her room was blown through by a large mass of fast-moving yellow that flew across the room and into the other wall. She realized it was Minato, who was tightly holding on to their air and bleeding from his mouth. You're a disgrace for a Hokage, Minato. Kushina whipped her head toward the voice and glared at the newcomer. He wore a large straw hat with a bell on the right side. It was tilted over his face, and she couldn't see his eyes. Overlaying the lower part of his face were two metal plates that came together in the middle of his face. He was wearing a dark green jacket with a high collar. His right sleeve went past his hand while the left sleeve was cut high at the shoulder. His neck was clothed in the same metallic-looking material that concealed his face, which covered his collarbone and visible arm except for the fingers. He was wearing a black shirt that was wrapped in bandages around his waist and a tan pair of pants with tight-fitting black boots. I should have known you would be here, Minato gasped out as he rose to his feet, still tightly gripping his son, Chiriko. Kushina's eyes widened in realization. Glad to see you remember me, brother, Chiriko said with hatred in his voice. You still blame me for Ka-san's death, don't you? Minato said, not really asking a question. Chiriko's head shot up, his eyes burning with hatred. They spun and swiftly evolved into the Mangekyo Sharingan. I'm going to kill you, Minato and kill everything you care about. Chiriko roared as he shot toward his brother, who'd activated his own Mangekyo Sharingan. In a massive burst of chakra, Minato's eyes had taken the form of 4 stars attached by a black ring around his pupil. Minato quickly realized he was at a disadvantage, so milliseconds before Chiriko reached him he flashed to the marker on Kushina. Just as he was about to hand her their son he felt a blade against his neck. There was a standstill for a moment, Minato trying to figure out what to do. What the blonde Hokage was not expecting was to be suddenly punched in the face by his wife, dropping their son in her lap and sent flying across the room once again. Oh, is this your brat, Minato? Chiriko asked rhetorically as he grabbed up the silent child. Minato's head shot up, ignoring the pain and ringing as Chiriko held his child roughly. He noticed that Kushina had a faraway look in her eyes and didn't seem to be processing anything around her. Damn it, he put her under a Sharingan Genjutsu, that's why she punched me. I need to get Nakata out of here. Minato thought desperately, but before he could do anything, his brother gained an evil look on his face. In a very swift movement, Chiriko resummoned his katana and sliced off Nakata's arm, who loosed a horrible heart-wrenching scream as he was roughly dropped back on the bed, blood spewing out of his shoulder and onto the bed and Kushina's legs. How does it feel, Nii-san? Chiriko yelled. The look of both hatred for his brother and sweet revenge was in his eyes. Minato flashed to Kushina again, grabbed Nakata and flashed away again. Minato's hideout. Minato appeared elsewhere in another bright flash of yellow light. He was greatly distressed, but made sure to keep a clear head, he had to for his family. Acting fast, he ripped off the sleeve of his Hokage robe and quickly tied it around what remained of Nakata's arm, in an attempt to lessen the bleeding. I have to stop my brother, but I need to take care of Nakata first. Even if he kills Kushina, it's what she would want me to do, Minato thought grimly as he ran toward the supplies in his hideout. Nakata's screams tortured him. The sight of seeing his son in such pain was horrendous, and he was continually fighting to keep his emotions under control. Minato grabbed medical supplies from a nearby cabinet, quickly opened a bandage and wrapped it around Nakata's arm. He then forced a blood pill down Nakata's throat to help with the blood loss. Using what basic healing jutsu he knew, he tried to lessen the bleeding. With Kushina. Chiriko turned to Kushina, releasing her from his genjutsu. He wanted to see the pain and suffering in her eyes, to savor it. She gasped as reality set back in. Realizing she had been put under by the man in front of her, she attempted to form a chain. It flew toward the man, but he merely sidestepped it. "Nice try," he said smugly. Grabbing her face, he stared into her violet, anger-filled eyes. The next moment they were both inside her mindscape. "Quite impressive that you were suppressing the Kyuubi and giving birth at the same time," Chiriko said with respect as he watched the mental avatar of Kushina on the ground sweating as hundreds of chains from her back kept the Kyuubi pinned to the large platform he was on. "But I have need of the fox," he said. Locking eyes with the giant fox who was growling at him, he put it under a genjutsu. The Kyuubi's eyes changed to a different shade of red and gained 3 tomo. "No! You can't do this! Why would you do this to your brother?" Kushina yelled as she panted, trying to hold down the Biju, who was trying harder to escape than before. "My mother was all that mattered to me. Minato didn't do his duty and defend her, he deserves to suffer," Chiriko said emotionlessly. The next moment they were both back in the room. Chiriko had his hand on Kushina's stomach, his hand glowing with chakra as he slowly started pulling out the demon fox. "Ah!" Kushina screamed as she slammed down into the bed, unable to control herself. She felt like every cell in her body was dying. Chiriko smirked. In one great effort, he fully pulled the Biju out and threw the mass of chakra across the room. As soon as the red bubbling chakra left his hand, it started expanding rapidly, blowing through the walls of the house and sending the roof flying. A couple seconds later the Kyuubi stood in what remained of the left side of the house. It merely stood there waiting for orders from Chiriko. Chiriko smirked as he walked out of the rubble, the ribcage of a blackish-blue Susanoo forming around him. "Let's burn down everything Minato holds dear, shall we?" Chiriko said to himself as he leapt atop the remains of Minato's home. With a silent order, the Kyuubi let loose a massive roar and shot through the forest, bowling over trees as it went toward the village. "I will have my revenge!" Chiriko yelled, his Susanoo forming into the full skeleton. A moment later he raised the fist of the Susanoo and punched the roof of the building below him, collapsing it all and destroying what remained of his brother's home before launching off after the Kyuubi. With Minato. Minato appeared above the collapsed house rubble in a bright yellow flash. Quickly taking in his surroundings, he realized that his house had been crushed. He had teleported to his wife's seal, so that meant she was under him. "Kushina!" Minato yelled frantically. Empowering his limbs with chakra, he lifted a large piece of a wall and chucked it dozens of feet away. He pushed another large block of rubble and could see red hair peeking out through the rocks. Activating his Sharingan, he was able to see her chakra network through the stones, though it was painfully weak. Rage filled his eyes, and he created his signature jutsu in one hand. "Rasengan!" Minato roared as he struck the rubble holding his wife down and sent it flying through the air out into the trees. There lay Kushina, one arm crushed, bleeding and impaled in multiple places, but thankfully still alive even after all she had been through. Minato fell to his knees as he cleared the last of the rubble and slowly pulled his wife away from the crushed building. "Kushinaheim, speak to me. Please, please talk to me," Minato nearly shouted. He was trying so hard to keep a level head, everything was falling apart around him. "Minato cough, he stole the Kyuubi, he's cough using it to attack village," Kushina said weakly, as she stared up at her husband through half-opened eyes. "Minato, you have to stop the fox, take care of our son, okay?" she said as firmly as she could as Minato held her hand to his face and caressed her hair. "Goodbye Minako-kun, see you on the other side," she said, fighting off death for a little while longer. Neither of them noticed the darkness flit across the clearing and merge with Kushina's shadow on the ground. "I will, Kushina, I will take care of him, I promise," Minato said, tears pouring out of his eyes. "Go, my love, save the village," she said with a small smile. Minato was forced to watch the light leave her eyes, to feel her go limp in his arms. "And oh!" Minato roared in anguish to the sky, his eyes evolving to his Mangekyo Sharingan. His chakra flared violently around him as his eyes started bleeding and gained a dangerous look. His Susanoo formed around him, a bright yellow skeleton. Minato fought against his own emotions. It wouldn't do to go full Susanoo on the Kyuubi and damage the village. At the moment though, he was having a hard time caring about whether or not the world knew he had a Sharingan. He dispelled the Susanoo and picked up his dead wife. In a bright flash of yellow light, he disappeared and reappeared in his hideout. Nakata lay in a corner on a bed, still crying from the pain of missing an arm. Minato grimaced and lay his wife down on the bed next to his boy. As he checked the bandages, he missed noticing the shadow leaving Kushina's body and merging with Nakata's. Minato carefully took off the bandages and was relieved to see that the bleeding had somewhat stopped. Apparently, Nakata had inherited his mother's accelerated healing rate. Minato grimaced as he realized what he would have to do. The Kyuubi would have to be sealed, which could only be done after he beat his brother. He'd have to seal him inside Nakata with the Reaper Death Seal. I'm so sorry, Nakata, I don't know what to do. I have to seal the Kyuubi, and I won't be here for you after my death. The ground rumbled as another building in the village was destroyed by the Kyuubi. Minato winced. Ag? I don't have a choice. I have to do this. You will regain your arm from this, Nakata. I'm so sorry, I hope you and Kushina can forgive me, Minato said in anger, pain, and grief at the situation he was in. Nakata looked directly up at him, his violet eyes already containing pain within them. Minato sighed heavily, and moving around he began preparing for his battle. He had to win. If he were going to accomplish one thing before he died, it would be to win this battle with his brother so he could seal the Kyuubi. I don't have time to prepare things for Nakata. Every moment I wait more people die. Screaming expletives, Minato punched a literal hole through the wall of his hideout, his emotions threatening to break out again. Who's there? North entrance of Konoha a few moments before. It was a warm, calm summer night in the hidden village of the Leaf. Lights were seen all around the village as the people went about their lives unaware of what was about to happen. The Kyuubi plowed through the forest, ready to unleash its fury upon the unsuspecting village. A moment later it reached the walls and rammed into them. They stood the first assault, barely. The huge beast roared powerfully before headbutting the walls again and breaking through, starting its destruction of the village. Swinging its tails and using its paws, the Kyuubi laid havoc to the nearest buildings, rapidly moving through the town. An eye for an eye is never enough. Never, 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 Chiriko said to himself as he alighted on the walls, watching the Biju charge into the village, destroying everything in its path. Sarutobi. Sandaime-sama, the Kyuubi has appeared in the north part of the village, Ananbu said as he bowed to the Sandaime Hokage. Yes, I heard it. Summon the forces and evacuate the civilians. We must push it out of the village and wait for the fourth. The retired Hokage said resolutely, strapping on another piece of his armor. Where on earth did the Biju come from? Minato Namikaze appeared on the top of the Hokage monument, having finished his preparations to fight the Kyuubi. Looking around, he quickly spotted the colossal rampaging fox. Minato suddenly sensed danger close by and quickly ducked and spun about in an attempt to kick out the feet of the person he knew was his brother. Chiriko backflipped, his sleeve and jacket whipping through the wind as he landed a few feet away from his brother, wearing an evil grin on his masked face. Minato said nothing as he shot forward. Dodging a swing from his brother, he attempted to stab him in the chest with one of his kunai. Both of their mangekyo was flaring, but for the first time, Minato noticed that Chiriko's mangekyo was different from how he remembered it. Minato dodged his brother's fireball that flew across the carved Hokage images before crashing into the side of the first head. He has an eternal mangekyo Sharingan. How in Kami's name did he get that? Minato wondered. Apparently, his shock showed on his face. Noticed my eyes, have you, Nai-san? Chiriko asked mockingly. Raising his straw hat, his distinctly different eyes flared and rotated at high speeds before slowing to a stop. 3 Chokutomo attached to each other in a circle, each having a black line connecting it to the edge of his eyes. Like them? I have gained the eternal light, something you will never have. Chiriko roared in triumph as he shot forward with his sword. It glowed and hummed with chakra as he attempted to slice his brother down the middle. Minato flashed away to one of his kunai on top of the third's head. He narrowed his eyes at his brother as the memories of how one got the EMS came back to him. You stole Tsusan's eyes, didn't you? Minato said flatly. It was the only logical explanation. Yes. And it was surprisingly easy. Chiriko yelled as he went through the hand signs for a jutsu, Katan, Gokameshitsu. Fire release, great fire destruction. Minato's eyes widened as Chiriko released as a massive stream of white-hot flames. There was only one thing to counter it, and by the time Minato decided on it, his body was already doing it. Katan, Gokameshitsu! He roared out as his flames clashed against Chiriko in a brilliant display of carnage and anarchy. They pushed against each other for a few moments before Minato disappeared in a flash of light. Chiriko's eyes widened a second before he felt a kunai pierce his chest, just barely missing his heart. He marked me with his seal. When? Chiriko thought as he coughed up blood, his mask sliding back to the sides of his face. Looking up, he saw Minato standing a few feet away. But what shocked him most was what his brother was holding. "You shouldn't have that. That should be mine," Chiriko roared. Minato was holding a large gunbai. It had been something Chiriko had tried to locate after killing their father, but he'd never been able to find it. Now he knew why. Minato simply grimaced. "Futon, gunbai gira to abu. Futon, gunbai great wave." Minato yelled as he swung the gunbai at his brother with all his strength. From the gunbai came a great wave of slicing air that flew toward Chiriko. Chiriko's eyes widened, and his Susanoo began to form around him quickly. He only got as far as the ribcage before the blast hit and sent him flying out across the village. An instant later, in a flash of light, Minato appeared flying through the air alongside him. Chiriko's eyes darted to his brother, but before he could react they both disappeared in another flash of brilliant yellow light. Just then an apartment complex was sent flying through the air by one of the tails of the Kyuubi. Miles from Konoha near the ocean. Minato and Chiriko tumbled to the ground near a three-pronged kunai buried to the hilt in a tree. They had both landed near the ocean on the coast of the Land of Fire. "Die, Minato!" Chiriko roared, the black flames of Amaterasu covering the ground as he got to his feet and his eyesight darting toward his brother. Minato's Sharingan saw the attack coming, and his Susanoo formed around him. The rib cage of his yellow Susanoo took the brunt of the flames. Minato's eyes burned and began to bleed, but he ignored it. Jumping behind the trees and out of his brother's eyesight, he released the Susanoo and dropped the flames to the ground where they continued to burn. Minato burst through the trees and attempted to nail his brother with his personally invented Rasengan. Chiriko saw the attack coming and back-flipped out of danger, ignoring the pain coming from his chest. Chiriko hit the ground and stumbled as he almost collapsed from having one of his main arteries cut. Blood was pouring down his shirt. "No! No, I'm so close!" Chiriko raged. His chakra flared as his purplish-black Susanoo formed around him, quickly evolving. "See the true power of the eternal light. Compurita Bodhi Susanoo, complete body Susanoo!" Chiriko roared out as his Susanoo grew to a massive height. It resembled a Tengu with outer armor. On its left side it had a long katana in a sheath that his right Susanoo hand was gripping the handle of. "I will not lose to you, brother!" Minato roared, his eyes flaring and bleeding profusely. While spinning violently, his yellow rib cage formed and quickly grew to a slightly shorter height than his brother's, glowing an ethereal golden color. Minato's Susanoo looked similar to his brother's, but his weapon was a large chain whip. With a roar, Chiriko drew his massive fiery purple katana. Slashing it through the air, he sent a crescent curve of purple chakra at his brother. Minato brought his massive hands up at the level of the slash, Chiriko smirking and thinking that Minato had no way to deal with this attack. Minato proved him wrong when two massive Rasengan formed in his hands, slamming into the chakra slash. "Kurama Rasengan!" Minato yelled out as he obliterated his brother's attack before launching himself across the terrain toward his brother's Susanoo. Pulling one hand back, he swung for his brother's face. So focused on nailing his target with his giant Rasengan, Minato didn't see Chiriko bring the sword around and cut halfway through his own Susanoo's torso. His eyes pulsed in pain, and it felt like every cell in his body was screaming. "This pain of using the Susanoo is getting worse, like father said it would," Minato grimaced. Bringing around his other Susanoo hand, he hit the other side of his brother's Susanoo face. Then both of their Susanoos dispelled from the strain and damage they had sustained. Minato fell to the ground and hit it hard. Chiriko flew through the air from the aftereffects of Minato's Rasengan. A few moments later, Minato pulled himself to his feet, moving toward where his brother had crashed. Must have run off. Not like him, Minato mused at not finding him there. He then popped his dislocated shoulder back in with a sickening crack and winced at the pain before taking a deep breath and disappearing in a flash. Moments before. With a sigh, Hiruzen ran forward and jumped out of his home office window and onto a nearby roof, looking around to get a better view of the village. He didn't even need to see the Kyuubi before he began heading toward its direction. The sheer evil presence of its chakra was so powerful that any ninja would be able to find the source with their eyes closed. As soon as he approached the great beast, the Kyuubi actually turned its head toward him, as if sensing his presence. What was even worse, my god, could it be? The Kyuubi's eyes held the Sharingan. How was that even possible? Kuchios no Jutsu, come forth, great monkey king Enma. Not taking any risks, Hiruzen bit his thumb and summoned forth his greatest ally and weapon, Enma. Appearing through a small cloud of smoke, Enma's eyes widened when he saw the great demon ravaging the village in front of them. "Good lord, it's the Nine Tails!" he exclaimed, turning back to look at Hiruzen. "What is going on, Sarutobi?" "The Kyuubi has appeared within the village, and it looks like the beast somehow has a Kekkai Genkai." Hiruzen quickly explained, pointing back to the giant fox. Look! The Kyuubi has the Sharingan. Sure enough, with a closer look, Enma was able to spot the 3 Tomo eyes of the beast. I think the Kyuubi might be being controlled, Sarutobi. Biju cannot have Kekei Genkai, Enma said as he winced from the crash of a flying building hitting the ground. Let's not waste any time, Enma. Hiruzen shouted out to his companion, completely not hearing what his partner said over the crash of another building. Transform and help me push the fox out of the village. Right. Here I go, Sarutobi. In another blast of smoke, Enma transformed into the famed black diamond staff and flew towards Hiruzen, who caught it out of the air and spun it around to face the 9 tails. Here we go! He shouted while pushing his chakra into the staff. Instantly, the staff expanded outwards at an incredible rate, shooting forth hundreds of yards in a second, all while growing as it went. By the time it reached the Kyuubi, the end of the staff was bigger than a house. It slammed into the beast with so much force that it actually managed to push it back, sending it flying backward and outside of the village's perimeter. A massive cheer arose from the shinobi who had been in the area to see this incredible feat. Seconds later, Shikaku, the head ninja under the 4th Hokage, landed next to Hiruzen. All around them, Jonin and Anbu ninja sped toward the Kyuubi. Lord 3rd, Shikaku called out. I briefed the high-level ninja. They're to keep fighting the Kyuubi and keep it out of the village now, but the 4th Hokage is nowhere to be found. Present. Kuchios no Jutsu. Minato yelled as he dropped on top of the Kyuubi with his summon Gamabunta, and pinning the Kyuubi onto the ground. The ninja surrounding the Kyuubi let up a cheer and Sarutobi sighed in relief. Try to hold him down as long as you can. Teleporting something this big requires preparation, Minato said, rapidly going through hand seals. Are you crazy? I am not a miracle worker. Hurry! Gamabunta shouted in response. The giant toad kicked back one of the flailing tails the Kyuubi had been attempting to whack him off with. Suddenly both Minato and Kyuubi disappeared in a massive, bright blinding light that made all the surrounding ninja cover their eyes. Gamabunta dispelled a moment later. Large clearing outside Namake's estate. Minato and the Kyuubi appeared outside the remains of his home. Not far away lay Nakata, wrapped in a cloth as he rested on a pedestal. Standing next to him was a man with pale white skin and straight red hair that covered the right side of his face, obscuring his eye. His only visible eye was a shocking violet color. He wore a black cloak with red clouds and a high collar, covering the rest of his body. The man observed the Kyuubi, then turned to Minato. Everything is prepared for the sealing, Hokage-sama. Konin-chan is taking your message to the 3rd. Minato nodded. Thank you, Nagato. I don't think I would be able to do this otherwise. Minato suddenly collapsed on the ground in pain, his eyes bleeding. As a result, he lost control of the Kyuubi, who shook its massive head as the Sharingan in its eyes faded. The Kyuubi looked around in confusion before resting its slitted eyes on Minato. Anger filled its eyes before the Kyuubi's claw streaked toward the blonde-haired man. Minato smirked, going to die anyway, who cares how blind I am. With that thought, his Susanoo formed in a burst of yellow light, and grabbing the giant fox's paw, he threw the Kyuubi off balance, causing it to crash to the ground. Minato attempted to grab the fox's face to take back control of him with his Sharingan, but instead, his Susanoo faded away, exhaustion setting in. The Kyuubi noticed his moment of weakness and swung a tail around, intending to flatten the blonde man. His tail suddenly stopped in midair, as purple chakra chains suddenly grabbed it. The next moment, even more chains burst out of the ground and wrapped themselves around the Kyuubi, binding him to the terrain with ease. The fox beast growled and tried to stand but was unable. Thank you, Nagato. Again, Minato said, attempting to stand. Unable to do so, he found himself caught by a man with orange hair. The man smiled at him kindly. Come, Hokage-sama, let's finish this, eh? Minato nodded and with the orange-haired man's help, limped over to the pedestal. Start the sealing, and I will direct the creation of the seal. We will also deliver the key to your sensei afterward, Nagato said, sitting down cross-legged by the seal. Fuin Jutsu, Shiki Fujin. Sealing Jutsu, Reaper Death Seal. Minato strained out, having finished the seals and dropping down next to the pedestal. The spectral image of the Shinigami appeared behind him, and he directed the arm of the death god to pull the restrained, but struggling, Kyuubi into Nakata. Pain coursed through his body, and he almost fell over, but was supported by the orange-haired man. Nagato's hands glowed blue as he held them over Nakata, his one visible eye staring at the slowly forming seal on Nakata's stomach. As Minato strained against the pain, he suddenly felt a warmth from his back. Looking behind him, he saw the man who had introduced himself as Yahiko holding a glowing green palm to his back. Nodding in thanks, Minato returned to his task of pulling the Kyuubi into his sun. Flashback. Who's there? Minato yelled. Turning around with a Rasengan formed in his hands, he glared at the three shadowy figures in the darkness of his hideout. We mean you no harm, Yandame, one said, sounding distinctly feminine. The middle one stepped out of the darkness, his features becoming visible. He had red hair and one visible purple eye, the other covered by his hair. The other two stepped out, and Minato noticed they all wore the same cloak, black with red clouds and high collars. Who are you and what do you want? Minato moved slowly between them and his wife's body and son. My name is Nagato, I am one of the students of your father. Minato's eyes widened majorly, staring at Nagato in shock. After your father took you to Konoha, he traveled the nations. He eventually ran into my friends and me when we were but weak war-suffering orphans from the war in the land of rain. At this, the man with spiky orange hair spoke up. Your father found us, trained us, and took care of us. He helped us to bring peace to our land, and with your father's help, we were able to defeat the tyrant that was Amegeku's ruler, Hanzo of the Salamanders. The purple-haired woman with a paper flower in her hair spoke up next. But your father was getting older, and no longer in his prime. The battle with Hanzo, even with our help, took much out of him. That is when your brother struck. He attacked your father out of the dark, and stole his eyes before killing him. We were entirely unable to stop him. She trailed off, the sadness and regret clear in her voice. All three of their faces showed their pain at losing their sensei. But Madara told us about you, and how you had become strong in Konoha. We kept tabs on you over the years as I eventually became the leader of Amegekure. In fact, we were on our way here to introduce ourselves to you when we sensed the Kyuubi. Your father gave us a way to track you, and thus we found your hideout here. Nagato explained, his one visible eye looking past Minato at his bandaged son. We wish to help you seal the Biju. I am extremely proficient in the sealing arts, and can be of help. Konan here is very talented in a range of paper-style jutsu, and Yahiko is talented mostly in water-style jutsu, Nagato said, returning his gaze to the visibly relaxed Minato. You're an Uzumaki, aren't you, Nagato? Minato asked, surprising the red-headed man. He nodded. But I didn't know about my heritage until recently. Minato smiled. Which means you are related to my son, my wife. Minato suddenly trailed off, but Konan understood and changed the subject. Hokage-sama, do you have a way to seal the Biju? Presumably into your son? Minato nodded in response. I plan to use the Reaper Death Seal. Nagato nodded in understanding. If you wish, we can deliver a message to the third so that he understands what happened. Yes, I believe that would be best, Minato said, quickly pulling out paper and writing a letter to the third who most likely would take back up the hat after his death. Go to my mansion with Nakata and prepare for the sealing. After I defeat my brother, I will teleport the Kyuubi there. Thank you for your help. Minato still had some misgivings about the trio, but he felt that he could trust them. Understood, Konan will deliver the letter, Nagato said. Taking Nakata from Minato, they quickly made their exit, heading toward the Hokage's mansion. Here we go. Forgive me, Kushinaheim, Minato sighed before disappearing in a bright flash of light. End flashback. Minato, what do you want us to do with Nakata? Nagato started, pulling Minato out of his thoughts and back to the task at hand. I hope that the village will see him as a hero. I explained it to Sarutobi in my letter. All I ask is that you take him to Sarutobi. He will know what to do and take care of Nakata. Minato groaned in pain and Yahiko poured more chakra into Minato. Understood, we will come and check on Naruto after a few years. I will look after my Oiko-san after all. Nagato chuckled, watching as Nakata's arm began to regenerate from the Kyuubi's chakra. It was the first thing he had directed it to do upon entering the boy's system. Nagato was glad that they had put the small child to sleep so that he could not feel the pain of having the strongest Biju forced into his body. Thank you, I have to go now, Minato said, calm settling over him as he felt the Shinigami reach for him from behind him. You did the best you could, Hokage-sama. Perhaps we will see each other again in the next world, Yahiko said from behind him, stepping away as Minato's soul was removed from his body. Nagato and Yahiko saw his soul smiling before disappearing entirely. It is done, let us go, Nagato said, standing and picking up the red-headed whiskered boy. Yahiko nodded, and a moment later 4 chains shot out of Nagato's back. Slamming into the surrounding ground, they lifted him up, and he began moving through the trees, the chains acting as legs while he floated in the middle of them, carrying Nakata Uzumaki. Yahiko warped water chakra around him, and moving it under him, he stood on the surface of the water, making the water in a wave through the trees. He forced the water to follow after his childhood friend toward the Hokage Tower. With Sarutobi. We have not found the 4th Hokage, Lord Third. Our best guess is that he was killed when he killed the Kyuubi, a jonin stated as he stood next to the retired Hokage. Biju cannot be killed, he must have sealed it somehow. Until we find Minato and this is all worked out, I will return to the mantle of Hokage. Understood? Sarutobi said firmly, his face serious as he stared out across the destruction of the village. Not all of it was destroyed, but there was a giant trampled pathway from the north gate toward the center. Hi, Hokage-sama. All the ninja responded and saluted the professor. Sarutobi nodded. Continue searching for the fourth, also begin rebuilding and relocation. Look for survivors in the pathway of the Kyuubi, he ordered, then disappeared in a shunshin. The shinobi all nodded and vanished toward their respective groups to transmit and follow the third's orders. The third appeared in the Hokage office in a swirl of leaves. He didn't think he would ever be taking back up the hat, but for now, it was what was needed. Sarutobi grimaced as he thought about how many shinobi died today protecting their village against the Biju. Sarutobi made a mental note to check at Minato's house. Wait! Where is Kushina? Sarutobi's mind clicked into place, the direction of destruction, Kushina being the container, pregnant oh no 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 and oh. Sarutobi left the village faster than he had ever before in his life, almost flying toward Minato's mansion, following the massive path of destruction made by the Kyuubi. She wasn't supposed to deliver for another month. Sarutobi nearly freaked, it all made sense now. Only a couple of moments later did he arrive at the decimated house that used to be Minato's mansion. Landing on top of the rubble, he searched around frantically, and a moment later he found the clearing. He saw a small pedestal with still burning candles on it. Confusion was written all over his face as he tried to understand what happened. Lord Third, my name is Conan, I'm a friend of Minato's. Sarutobi turned quickly toward the voice, seeing a lady appearing in midair, paper coming together to form her body before she alighted on the ground. Her orange eyes stared at him as he took in her features, purple hair with a paper flower and wrapped in a black cloak with red clouds. Much has happened, all will be explained. Kushina Uzumaki and Minato Namikaze's bodies have been delivered to the Hokage Tower. Sarutobi sighed deeply, they are both dead then. Conan picked up on his thoughts. Minato wrote you a letter before his death, which is also at the Hokage Tower. We arrived there just after you left, Conan explained. Sarutobi nodded and disappeared in a leaf shunshin toward his tower. Conan faded into paper and fluttered away. A few moments later Sarutobi appeared within his office, the room different from how he had left it. On the two couches laid the bodies of Kushina and Minato. Kushina looked in terrible shape, and Sarutobi could easily tell that both were no more. Sarutobi was suddenly turned toward his desk at the sound of a baby crying. Sitting on his desk was a small basket, and within was a red-headed infant, 3 whisker marks on each side of his face. Picking up the child, he noticed a scroll with the Namikaze crest sitting by the basket. Sarutobi carefully held the boy and opened the scroll. Hello Sarutobi, I regret to inform you that by the time you read this I will be dead. As you knew, Kushina was pregnant with our son, but things went wrong. I have never told you or anyone else this, but I have a brother, and I do know who my father is. I lived with him and my mother for 6 years before coming to Konoha. After Kushina gave birth to our son, my brother attacked, wanting revenge for our mother. My brother Chiriko believes that I let our mother die in an attack from IWA Shinobi years ago, which I didn't. Regardless, Chiriko blames me for her death and has hated me ever since. My brother cut off Nakata's arm, and as I was trying to stop the bleeding, he pulled the Kyuubi out of Kushina. Now I know this isn't usually possible. You see, our father was Madara Uchiha, and both my brother Chiriko and I possessed the Sharingan. At this Sarutobi nearly dropped the scroll and baby Nakata in shock. Getting control of himself, he set the baby boy back into the basket and continued reading. I kept my Sharingan a secret for many reasons. It is likely that Nakata will also possess the Sharingan. Sarutobi, I want you to take care of my son. I want the villagers to see him as the hero he is for containing the Kyuubi. When Nakata becomes Chunin, I want his heritage explained to him and his inheritance given to him. While the mansion was destroyed, the basement still remains. I would also request that you rebuild the estate for Nakata to use one day. I am genuinely sorry for hiding things from you, Sarutobi-senpai. I hope that you can forgive me. All I ask is that you care for Nakata, and make sure he has a good life. He must be known as Nakata Uzumaki until he is strong enough to defend himself. If his heritage is not kept a secret, then my brother will come back for him. Last thing, 3 students of my father are helping me with sealing the Kyuubi. The one named Nagato, is the new leader of Amigakure, and he is an Uzumaki. He will be returning to the village in a few years to check in and introduce himself to Nakata. That is all. Minato Namikaze Uchiha. Sarutobi did drop the scroll at this point, shock clearly on his face as he processed everything that he had read. Turning back to the boy, he smiled. I promise Minato Kushina that I will look after your son. Again, Naruto. Naruto nodded and began running around the training course as fast as he could. Nearby in the training field, the children of the Kazekage were practicing. Tamari was working on low-level windjutsu with her new fan, Kankuro was practicing with his puppets, and Gaara was figuring out how to make sand armor a workable concept. Baki stood watching over them all, and Naruto was sprinting around the outskirts of the training field. All of them had switched into training clothes, and they'd been training for several hours. They were all determined to get stronger, and Baki was struggling to come up with lessons fast enough. Baki had been uneasy about training them all when Temari had first requested it to her father. Baki had been in the office at the time, and he knew he would get assigned this job. Training the children of the Kazekage was a great honor, but it also meant he had to be wary of dying. 2 out of the 4 children could kill him if they really wanted to, both had killed hundreds of civilians and shinobi. The Kazekage had agreed to the request, predictably assigning him as their teacher until they entered the academy. That was 6 months ago, and all 4 of them had since grown much stronger. Baki had taught them how to channel chakra to their ears, eyes, and muscles to improve them. That had been when Naruto activated his dojutsu, which was, in fact, the Byakugan. The Kazekage had been ecstatic when he read Baki's report on their training. Naruto was definitely a significant asset to the village's military. Naruto's Byakugan didn't pulse out the veins around his eye like the Hyuga's clan Byakugan, surprisingly. The Kazekage had made the fact that Naruto's eyes were the Byakugan an S-class secret in the village. Only a few people knew this because the Kazekage didn't want spies from Konoha, or worse. Naruto, enough. Take a breather and then you will spar with Kankuro, then Temari with Gaara, Baki ordered, getting acknowledgments from his students. Hi Baki-sensei, Naruto replied, his voice flat and monotone. Baki kept his composure, used to Naruto's dislike of him. He didn't understand why Naruto seemed to dislike him, but it didn't worry him. Naruto followed orders without objection in regards to training, and nothing more was required of him for now. Naruto moved to a tree and sat down, the shade around him expanding as the tree literally bent over him. Naruto's control over all plant life still amazed Baki. The plants themselves seemed to want to protect him, and would defend him from harm without him even being aware there was a danger. It was very similar to Gaara's automatic sand defense. Naruto leaned back against the tree trunk, staring into the crisp, clear blue sky, no clouds at all visible. He closed his eyes and let his dojutsu rest. He practically always had it on because it didn't strain him, and being able to see everywhere was very useful. The beauty of it was that no one could tell that he'd activated it unless they looked closely and knew what to look for. Naruto let a faint smile come to his lips. He somehow knew that there was a specific reason for this. His sensei had given him what scrolls Suna had on the Hyuga clan, in which one stated that most beginner Byakugan users had to practice to extend their range past 100 meters. He'd found that his first day using it he could almost see all of Suna. With training he could see the gate guards. I can feel it, Naruto thought. Since the night he lost his parents, he could sense this being out in the far distance. Over time it kept getting closer to him, and he felt more at peace and calm as it got closer. Naruto awaited its arrival with open arms, knowing it would answer all his questions. Taking a deep breath he relaxed further against the tree, letting his aching muscles calm down. Naruto let down his guard, something that Baki-sensei had drilled into them never to do. But my guard is never down, even if I'm asleep the plants protect me, he mused. I wonder if I can get the plants to not defend me without having to constantly order them not to. I can only get so strong if they are always defending me, Naruto thought after a few moments. He loved the plants dearly, but it would be hard to grow if they would always save him from getting punched even though he had messed up. Naruto, come to the center for your spar, Baki called. Naruto opened his eyes, his dojutsu activating in a pulse of chakra. His vision became shades of gray, expanding and enabling him to see everything around him. His vision darted over to Kankuro as he stood up, rotating his view around the boy, looking for anything unusual he would need to know in the fight. He kept his face blank as he noticed that the Kankuro standing in front of him was a puppet, Kankuro hiding inside the bandages on the puppet's back. It would seem Kankuro has learned a new technique, Naruto thought as he stopped in the starting spot and waited for the spar to begin. At the edge of the sparring area sat Gaara and his sister on a bench of sand. Hajime. Both Naruto and Kankuro didn't move, Naruto seemingly staring at nothing while in truth he was analyzing Kankuro from all angles and even from within the puppet, seeking to find all the new hidden traps. Kankuro meanwhile was preparing to attack. He wasn't good at this technique yet, and most likely he would need to separate from his puppet as soon as the fight got going. It was, after all, very hard to see what was happening when inside a cocoon of bandages. Naruto did something that confused his opponent and the onlookers. Bored from waiting for Kankuro to attack, he sat down cross-legged, his hands in his lap. The next moment he closed his eyes, looking like he was meditating. Kankuro scowled. Moving his puppet forward, he threw kunai at Naruto. Naruto visibly concentrated, his face scrunching up, but he didn't move. Temari and Baki became concerned that the kunai would hit the pale white-haired boy. The kunai flew closer, and the plants did not appear as they usually did. Naruto relaxed, his eyes still closed. He pushed himself off the ground onto one hand, dodging every kunai, one just barely missing his arm he was using to support himself. I forgot that he can see everything. He could see that coming even with his eyes closed. Kankuro thought in annoyance. Dodge this then. Kankuro gave up on tricking Naruto with his puppets, knowing he had figured it out already. Jumping off his puppet's back, he manipulated it into firing hundreds of Saban. They weren't all entirely accurate, but most would hit Naruto. He was still learning this after all. Naruto's eyes were still closed as he watched the incoming attack, deciding that practicing more skills would be beneficial to his development. He went through hand seals, backing up to gain more time from the incoming Saban attack. I could have the plants defend me, but I am determined to learn other skills. Futon, Detapa, Wind Style, Great Breakthrough. Naruto called out, taking a deep breath before expelling a moderate-sized gust of wind. Baki's eyes widened at the size of the technique. After all, Naruto was only around 6 years old. He shouldn't be able to perform that technique to such a large extent. But then again, I'm comparing him to human standards, and we aren't sure he's human, Baki mused. They had previously tried to get blood samples to test. Every attempt had been futile, and several people had lost their lives. On the training field, Naruto's jutsu blew the Senban away before continuing on toward Kankuro, who leaped as far out of the way as possible with his puppet. The wind burst continued on before impacting with the sturdy walls of the training field and dissipating. Kankuro turned back to Naruto to ask him how he did that when he found Naruto in front of him, his hair whipping around his face and horns. Naruto's fist was on a crash course with his face, and he was woefully unable to dodge. The impact sent him flying backward a couple of yards. Winner, Naruto, Baki called out, stopping the match. Naruto walked over to Kankuro and offered his hand, helping him up. That was amazing, Naruto. I'm not even mad that I lost, Kankuro said, picking his discarded puppet up. Not like I would have won anyway if he had used the plants, Kankuro mused. Those plants were freaking strong. He'd seen them from the mansion when they restrained the demon Gaara had turned into. Please clear the field, you two. It's Gaara's and Temari's turn, Baki said. Both nodded before moving to the sidelines. Naruto raised an eyebrow at Gaara's bench that fell apart into sand and followed him. Well, can't let him do me up now, can I? Naruto thought, pointing both open palms at the ground. Kankuro watched as a large couch formed out of soft plants and vines in a matter of moments. Naruto smirked and sat down, gesturing for him to follow, which he did. You two in your competition with your powers, Kankuro shook his head, turning to his two siblings standing in the middle talking to Baki. Well, I can't let Gaara and Aizen do better than me, can I? Naruto returned. Kankuro just chuckled, focusing on the match that was just starting. Hajime. Temari immediately went on the offensive. Pulling her fan off her back, she swung it as hard as she could, creating a decently sized force of wind. Gaara narrowed his eyes at the attack. It wasn't a powerful attack but would still hurt if he allowed it to hit. He knew from experience how much it would hurt. Naruto had convinced him to go through training without his sand on some days, and Naruto wouldn't use his plants on those days. In spars, Gaara had gotten hurt for the first time in his life, and it had been a new experience. Gaara found he preferred not getting hurt when possible. Gaara's sand thrust up out of the ground, swirling around him. The cutting air from his sister impacted into it harshly, but it never stood a chance against the yokai-reinforced sand. Temari grimaced, trying to think of a way to defeat her brother. Her face lit up a moment later. A shinobi must use all options available to them, that's what Baki-sensei taught us. With that in mind, Temari shot off as fast as she could, which was decently fast for her age. Gaara raised an eyebrow at her direct attack, his arms crossed. He hadn't moved since the start. His sand lurched up in a fist shape toward Temari. His eyes widened when his sister didn't dodge or retaliate, just continued running head-on at his sand. Gaara pulled back the sand before it hit his sister, not wanting to severely injure or even kill her. He did not have absolute control over his sand, and there had been a lot of force in that attack. Temari smirked as she saw her plan was working. Yanking off her fan in one quick swing, she fired another burst of wind at her sibling. Futon, Kazakiri no Jutsu, Wind Release, Wind Cutter Technique. Temari cried, unleashing the most powerful attack she had so far at her younger brother. Gaara's eyes narrowed, realizing she was taking advantage of the fact she was his sister, and he cared about her. Gaara growled as the sand swirled around him fiercely before encasing him in a sand dome. The wind attack clashed harmlessly against the sand, and Temari frowned. Gaara's sand was still much faster than her wind, her attacks wouldn't be enough to cut through. Temari tried to move and found both her legs stuck. Looking down, she found sand creeping up her legs. "I win, Temari Wanisan," Gaara stated, the sand wrapped around him falling to the ground. Temari sighed, "I give up." "Winner, Gaara," Baki yelled out, a tad unnecessarily. Gaara nodded before retracting all his sand to the surrounding ground. Naruto walked up a moment later, staring at the sand that was in a rough circle around Gaara. "What are you looking at, Naruto and I?" Gaara questioned. "Gaara, how long can you hold one shape with your sand?" Naruto inquired, his pale eyes shifting to Gaara's face. While Naruto directly looking at someone was unneeded as he could see them from anywhere, he did it out of respect and proper manners. "A couple of hours, I haven't tried longer than that," Gaara responded, confused. "Could you perhaps form some sort of container out of your sand to hold the rest of it? To carry it around with you?" Naruto mused, a thinking expression on his face. Gaara's eyes widened slightly in an understanding of what his friend suggested. Concentrating, he focused on a large gourd, as it made the most sense to him to carry all his sand in something like that. A few moments later, the sand swirled together and formed a large gourd in front of him. He directed the rest of his sand inside the sand gourd, creating a cork to go in the top once everything was inside. "That works," Naruto commented. Gaara nodded. "I'll need to get gear of some kind to attach it to my back." "I can help with that," Baki commented. Gaara only nodded in response to his sensei. Next day, Gaara and Naruto walked down the street of Sunagakure, heading toward a restaurant. The villagers ignored them, glared, or moved out of the way. It didn't matter to either of them, they had each other as friends, and the rest of the world's approval was unneeded. "Gaara and I, do you think there is a place out there where people like us can go and not be judged? Not be feared?" Naruto abruptly asked, surprising his friend. Gaara didn't immediately answer, taking a few moments to think about it as they strolled down the street. Gaara now carried around the large gourd. He had a wide leather band from his left shoulder to his right hip with which he had attached the sand gourd to his back. "I'm not sure, Naruto and I've never heard of such a place," Gaara responded eventually. "If there isn't, would you want to help me create it?" Naruto asked, a small level of childishness coming into his voice. They were after all almost 6 years old, and even with everything they'd gone through, they were still children. Gaara smiled widely, one of the things he had only started doing after meeting Naruto. There was just something about Naruto that made him happy. "Of course, Naruto and I would love to," Gaara replied sincerely. "Awesome. It'll be a village, away from all those who hate people who are different. A place where those that want a place to fit in can come to. A place they won't be judged and hated but loved and cared for," Naruto declared excitedly. "I promise I'm going to make such a place one day." Naruto's eyes shone with determination to bring about his new goal. "I will do my best to help you reach your goal, Naruto and I-san," Gaara said calmly. Upon reaching the door to the restaurant, he pushed it open and waited for Naruto to walk through. Naruto thanked him, and they sat down at a table. "Gaara, it's getting close. I can feel it almost here now. Maybe it will help me complete my goal," Naruto said. Gaara nodded. He was also curious as to what it was that Naruto could feel coming. He'd expressed at one point that he thought it was perhaps his parents, then become depressed for a while, wondering why they would have abandoned him in the desert. Gaara turned as the waiter stopped at their table. Both Naruto and Gaara shared a look at the anger and hatred they could feel coming from the server. He apparently didn't like them, and after they ordered, the man quickly left. "I wonder why he hates us," the woman from last week said. "I killed her daughter," Naruto commented almost absent-mindedly. While Naruto wouldn't resort to killing as his first solution, he had killed many villagers that had attacked him. Gaara nodded, being on the same boat as Naruto, and having killed many villagers and assassins that had attempted to take his life. Naruto turned back to Gaara, coming out of his musings. "Read something interesting recently. It's news from a few years ago, but I only just found a scroll about it." Gaara perked up, interested in what Naruto had to share. Apparently the strongest Biju, the Kyuubi, attacked the Leaf Village. It says that the 4th Hokage killed the fox at the cost of his own life. But something confuses me. According to Shikaku, Biju can't be killed, Naruto thought out loud. "That's true, we can't be killed. Most likely Hitomi Wani-san was sealed. They would have had to use a baby as her yokai is too potent to be sealed into anything else." Shikaku's cackling voice rang out in Gaara's head. I thought you were asleep, Gaara mentally replied. Conversation is exciting, besides listening to the Ki no Ko, Tree Child, is interesting, Shikaku replied from within the mindscape of Gaara's mind. When Gaara focused back on the real world, he found Naruto patiently looking at him. What did he say? He confirmed what you said, Biju cannot be killed. They have to be sealed. Apparently, the Kyuubi would have to be sealed within a baby, as she can't be sealed into anything else, Gaara replied, enjoying Naruto's shocked expression. Wait, the Kyuubi is a she? Gaara nodded. Huh. Naruto seemed to regain his faraway look. Gaara knew he was either thinking or looking at something that only he could see with his dojutsu. Gaara could seldom tell when Naruto had it activated, he hardly looked different with it on. A few moments later the waiter returned carrying the food, setting it down and glaring at them as he backed away before leaving. Gaara ignored the man with ease, and Naruto's attention was entirely on the food in front of him. Itadakimasu, they both said calmly before digging in. Neither said anything as they eat, preferring to thoroughly enjoy their food. Gaara! The food is poisoned. Stop eating it. I'm working to get it out of your system now. Gaara immediately spit out the food, turning to warn Naruto only to find him scrunching up in pain. The next instant Naruto let loose a tremendous scream of pain. Gaara's eyes widened majorly, shock and confusion overwhelming him. Gaara, the waiter poisoned you and Naruto. The raccoon was cut off as Gaara's chakra spiked dangerously, and strong killing intent flowed in thick waves from the boy, choking everyone in the vicinity. His sand started to quickly rush out of the gourd, heading toward the waiter, intent on crushing him. Gaara! Now is not the time. Later! You have to get Naruto to a hospital! Shikaku yelled, cutting through the red haze enveloping his Jinchuriki. He shook his head, realizing the danger his friend was in. Even if Naruto wasn't human, he didn't have a Biju inside of him to heal him from poison. Gaara sent his sand out and wrapped it around Naruto quickly, the killing intent fading only slightly. Picking up his friend he hurried across the room, sand flowing out from him in waves and moving people, tables, and chairs out of the way. He reached the front doors and blew them off their hinges and into the street without a second thought. Right before he left he shot the waiter a glare. You will die, Gaara snarled, his voice dangerous and demonic. The waiter just about near fainted from the killing intent and terror. The next moment Gaara turned and disappeared from view. Soon a hospital. Naruto lay on a hospital bed, Gaara standing right beside him as a medic ran his glowing hands over his friend. Naruto looked terrible, even paler than usual, his muscles strained and sweating profusely. Gaara was fighting hard to keep his emotions under control, wanting to kill everything and anything. They dared to hurt my brother. Gaara's rage fought to control him, but he kept it under control. He needed to be here and watch over Naruto. Also in the room were his two siblings, his sensei Baki, and the Kazekage. Both his siblings were close by, looking on in concern at Naruto, while Baki and his father waited for the medic to report. Kazekage-sama, I regret to inform you that there is not much I can tell you about the boy. While I found that he was given a poison strong enough to kill an elephant in a couple of minutes, the rest of his body is actually being blocked from my jutsu, the medic said in obvious confusion. I don't even know how that's possible, he muttered. Irrelevant. Can the antidote be made? The Kazekage demanded sternly. I don't want to lose such a valuable asset to the village. Not only that, but Naruto kept Gaara sane and in control. Yes, Kazekage-sama, but it's unneeded. His body seems to be rejecting the poison slowly by itself. Make the antidote anyway. I don't want to take any chances, he ordered. The doc nodded before grabbing a syringe from a nearby cart. Gaara's eyes widened as the doctor brought the needle toward his friend's arm. No, wait! Gaara yelled, but it was too late. Vines shot out of the floor around the bed and the walls. Lashing through the air they slammed into the medic, throwing the shocked man across the room and into the wall. Gaara and the others in the room watched as the vines moved back and forth around Naruto menacingly, daring anyone else to try to reach the white-haired boy. Baki, check on Yakugo, carefully the Kazekage instructed. Baki nodded, slowly moving toward the moaning medic. He had already been hurt by those vines before, and he didn't want to experience that again. The vines seemed to settle a moment later. Wrapping themselves around Naruto, they lifted him off the bed before forming a cocoon that floated between the ceiling and floor, attached to the nearby surfaces like a spider web. Stay back, Naruto isn't awake. Which means the vines will attack anyone who gets close to him, Gaara warned, already knowing that the vines only truly cared about protecting Naruto. Will he be okay? Temari asked shakily. Gaara nodded. He will. With Naruto. Naruto slowly opened his eyes, pupilless orbs taking in his surroundings. Sitting up, Naruto looked around. Above him was a beautiful sunset sky, an exotic shading of orange, red and yellow hues. On the ground, he was surrounded by plants of all types, trees of every kind and green thick luscious grass. Think Garden of Eden type place. Naruto got to his feet, confused as to where he was and how he got here. I've never been to such a place, but why does it feel so right? Naruto struggled to find the words to describe how he was feeling. The leaves behind him rustled, making him turn around quickly. Coming through the trees was a beautiful lady, the plants moving out of her way as she walked. Her incredibly long, white hair trailed on the ground behind her. She had pale skin with delicate facial features. Her eyes were white like his, and her eyebrows were cut very short and round, a red shade of lipstick on her lips. She had 2 brown horns that stuck out from her head. Naruto's eyes were suddenly drawn to the third eye in the middle of her forehead. It was red and had rings in it, as well as 9 tomo. She slowed to a stop in front of him, gazing upon him kindly, and for some reason, he felt such warmth as he looked at her. He noticed that she wore a high-collared kimono which had tomo running down the center and edges of the gown, adorned with intricate gold and purple lines. "Hello, Naruto." Her voice was elegant and melodic. Naruto's pale eyes met with hers, and they stared at each other for a few moments. Who are you?" Naruto stammered out. The answers were almost here. He could feel it. The beautiful woman smiled slightly sadly at him. "My name is Kaguya Otsutsuki and I am your mother." Naruto finally snapped, his mouth dropping open in shock as he stared at the woman claiming to be his mother. Abruptly his emotions changed, going from shock to anger. "Where were you?" he yelled at her, the plants around him moving agitatedly. Kaguya frowned. "I was with your father, Masuko." She sighed, seeing him still angry. "I knew he would be upset." "Naruto, I have a lot to explain to you. All of your questions will be answered." Her eyes teared up slightly. "But Naruto, I did not stay away because I wanted to. I love you so much, Naruto. It has taken 6 years before I could finally talk to you." Naruto's anger faded and he began to tear up and cry. He knew that she was right. He could feel that she was his mother, and her saying it only confirmed it. "And as she says she loves me? She didn't stay away because she doesn't want me," Naruto thought joyfully. Kaguya fell to her knees and stretched out her arms toward her son. Naruto ran into her embrace, and they hugged, crying in happiness and relief. "I love you so much, Masuko. I'm never going to let you go," Kaguya purred into his ear, holding him tightly in her embrace. "I love you too, mother. I could feel you coming. I am so glad you are here," Naruto cried, soaking her elegant robes. But Kaguya didn't care about her dresses. The plants around them slowly formed a surface that was comfortable to lay on, and they did, Kaguya laying down and pulling her crying son with her. Naruto cried and cried in happiness, and then sadness, then happiness again, telling her how he was so glad to see her over and over again. She continued to reassure him that she was never leaving. "I'm so glad to finally get to see my baby," Kaguya thought. Later, Kaguya rested against the plants, cradling the sleeping Naruto in her arms. She felt so calm, so at peace to finally be holding her son in her arms. She knew the life he had gone through thus far, and she was proud of him, of his want to get stronger and make a place for those that are scorned. She knew the challenges Naruto would eventually face, but that wasn't now. Kaguya felt the change in the air, the warmth of the plants changing ever so slightly. She felt a connection form within her mind. The next moment she felt meaning and thoughts being communicated to her. "Yes, I agree with you, dear. Our son is going to be very strong. I'm so proud of him, and I know you are too," Kaguya thought. Her response was a definite feeling across the connection. She smiled, knowing her husband was happy that he had finally been able to move her entire essence inside Naruto. Her husband had found Naruto's aura on Earth 3 years ago when Naruto lost his adoptive parents, for that was the first time Naruto flared his chakra. It had taken so long to find Naruto because her husband didn't deal well with deserts and his connection to the world wasn't as good in them. He had immediately moved a significant amount of power to the desert to protect their son while he focused on establishing a connection between their son and her. The process took 3 years overall because she contained such a massive amount of power. It was much harder for him to transmit her into their son when their son was in the desert, a place that lacked plant life. Kaguya felt the mental prodding from her husband and sighed. "But he looks so adorable sleeping. He's not going to be a young child for much longer, you know." She received a feeling of understanding from her husband. Kaguya pulled Naruto closer as he subconsciously snuggled into her robes. She cooed to him in his sleep, stroking his white hair and running her hand over his horns. "His horns are so big for his age," Kaguya said proudly. Okay, I'll wake him up. You're so impatient, dear." Kaguya chuckled at the excited prodding from her husband. Sitting up, she pulled Naruto with her. Wake up, Masuko, we have much to talk about, Kaguya said softly, running her hand through Naruto's somewhat long hair. Naruto murmured, curling up into a smaller ball close to her. Help me out, love? Kaguya thought, smiling at her son. A second later, a fuzzy vine grew out of the ground and wrapped around Naruto before beginning to tickle him. Ha ha! Stop it, make it stop, ha ha ha! Naruto laughed as he began to wake up, trying to get the tickling vine off of himself. Once he was fully awake, the vine retracted back into the ground. Naruto rubbed his eyes and looked at his smiling mother peacefully. It wasn't a dream then, Naruto said, his voice underlaid with happiness. Kaguya smiled warmly, she just couldn't help it. He's just so cute and adorable, Kaguya thought, receiving her husband's mental agreement and excitement. Naruto-kun, I know you have questions, please ask them. Kaguya's harmonic voice flowed over Naruto, relaxing him and filling him with happiness. Ka-san, what am I? Naruto asked quietly. He had so many questions, but that was what came to mind first. I think that would be best explained by explaining what I am. I'm not human and neither is your father. Naruto nodded, getting comfortable on the soft ground. Kaguya put her hands together eloquently in her lap, collecting her thoughts before beginning. I am a part of a species from another world. We are called Otsutsuki, world eaters. I grew up with my family there for the first 56 years or 80 human years of my life. I became disgusted with what my family did to worlds. We would find the Kaminoki of each world and consume it, adding to our own power and causing the destruction of those worlds. Kaguya stopped, being interrupted by Naruto. What is a Kaminoki? The pale-eyed boy asked his mother, confusion on his adorable face. At least Kaguya thought so, but she faked annoyance. Hang on, I'll explain that in a minute, giving him a playful glare before continuing. Where was I? Oh yes. I left my family, traveling across the stars I came to this world. Finding another Kaminoki here, I decided to protect this world from my family. I began to know the inhabitants of this planet, humans. I fell in love with an emperor, and we worked toward peace in the human world together. Kaguya sighed sadly here, and Naruto looked concerned, not wanting to see his mother unhappy. Plants came out of the ground and did their best to comfort the pale-skinned woman. She eventually got herself back under control, stifling the tears that wanted to fall. His name was Tenji, and he was the first person to ever show me love. But it didn't last anywhere near as long as I wanted it to. A neighboring emperor tried to kidnap me, and I killed many of their soldiers in self-defense. Tenji was horrified of my powers and decided to betray me to prevent a war from breaking out. As Kaguya fought back tears, Naruto moved to her side and hugged her, trying to comfort his mother. Kaguya took a moment to get herself under control once more. Tenji had meant so much to her. He'd never gotten to see his two sons grow up. She sighed before continuing, however, when Tenji's forces and the enemies attempted to capture me, I fled to the Kaminoki. As they converged on me to kill me, I ate the fruit of the god tree, gaining powers beyond my imagination. She chuckled bitterly here. I felt so powerful. I used my power to wipe out the entire army with ease. With my new power, I foolishly thought that I could stop my family from consuming this world. Naruto patiently waited for her to continue, things starting to make sense to him, but he still had many questions. I was blinded by fear of my family and the pain of Tenji's betrayal. But I was overjoyed when I found that I was pregnant with twins, Tenji being the father. Years passed and my sons were born. I named them Hagoromo and Hamura. They both gained the power of chakra from me. Kaguya turned and looked directly at Naruto. They are your brothers, Naruto, and they convinced me to not go on with my foolish plan. Naruto's eyes widened, but he kept silent. I wanted to turn the world into an army using the tree against my family. But your brothers showed me that I only had the power of one Kaminoki, while my family has consumed hundreds of worlds. I would never stand a chance. She smiled kindly at this. I lost my fear and stress. I didn't have a plan, but I was finally at peace. I began to spend time with my children and the humans, getting to know them and understanding them. It was a year later that I was told I was pregnant with you and that your birth would kill me. Naruto's eyes widened suddenly, and he looked at her in a mixture of horror and confusion. She did her best to reassure him. Naruto, I did die when you were born, but your father caught my soul and kept me with him over the thousands of years that we waited for you to form. Naruto visibly calmed down, but his confusion was evident. Naruto, you know how the plants protect you? Kaguya asked, and Naruto shakily nodded. That's your father protecting you, Naruto. You see, your father is the Kaminoki, the god tree of this world. Naruto's jaw dropped clean open at that, and she chuckled at his baffled expression. I think I ought to let him explain this, he wants to. Don't freak, okay? She said, holding and rubbing his hand. He nodded at her and gulped, looking around and expecting someone to appear. Naruto nearly fell over backward as he suddenly felt like a part of his mind opened. He could feel things coming through the opening. He could feel memories and warmth, pride directed at him. It took him a bit to understand, but he realized that this was his father. Tusan? Naruto thought, and received a mental feeling of positivity. Naruto turned to his mother, still somewhat confused. Why isn't Tusan talking? Naruto asked, his head tilted to the side cutely, his mother fighting the urge to squeal at her adorable son. Kaminoki don't communicate the same way humans and we do, Naruto. They use emotions, thoughts, memories, and feelings to communicate with one another. I believe that you will be able to form such connections with others as well, she said, receiving a nod from Naruto. Naruto focused back on the entity he had identified as his father, asking him to explain. The next instant he received an influx of information, feeling, emotion. Naruto's face took on a steady look of shock as he processed all the memories. My father is named Asutsuri, he is the god tree of this world, Naruto thought in awe. He could feel the power his father possessed. He watched the glimpses of memories, his father and his mother watching over the human race, waiting for him to eventually form together. He smiled as he saw his mother and father joke and talk together. He watched his parents separate his father's power and spread it over the world. He watched them give bloodlines to the humans, preparing them for the eventual coming of the Otsutsuki. Naruto frowned as he watched the memories of the humans abusing their gifts, using it for war and destruction. Naruto gathered his thoughts as the influx of memories came to a stop, his father's warmth and love for him permeating him. A lot of my questions have been answered, I understand what I am now. I'm not human, I'm Otsutsuki and Kaminoki, Naruto said, more to himself than his mother. But she nodded anyway and smiled at him, loving his thinking expression. Naruto suddenly looked up, staring into her eyes with intensity. You and Tusan aren't going to leave me, are you? Naruto asked, fear and hope, suspicion and want in his voice. He was uncertain. No, Naruto-kun, we are never going to leave you. Asukun has moved me and my power within you. It was going to take a couple more months, but it sped up when you were in danger. Kaguya smiled warmly at her son, reaching out and hugging him. We are never going to leave you, Misuko. Naruto smiled brightly, grinning in joy as he hugged his mother back strongly. Thank you for coming for me, mother, thank you for loving me, Naruto said. In his mind, he was communicating the same feeling and thankfulness to his father through the link, receiving a sense of affection in return. Naruto sighed in happiness, so happy to have finally found his parents. A question suddenly popped into his mind, Ka-sen, where are we and how do I come back to it? We are inside your mindscape, Naruto. Naruto tilted his head in confusion and in the next moment memories flowed into his head from his father, and he suddenly understood what a mindscape was. Oh, I get it now, Naruto exclaimed, and Kaguya gave him a look. Asukun explained it to you, didn't he? Naruto nodded happily in response. Kaguya only sighed, ruffling her son's shaggy hair. Naruto grinned, before pointing at her forehead. Ka-san, why do you have a third eye in your forehead? Naruto asked innocently. She chuckled, her third eye blinking sideways before turning and looking at Naruto. This was something I gained from your father when I ate the fruit. It's called the Rinna Sharingan, and when you are older, I will teach you how to use yours. At this Naruto became very excited, clapping his hands together. I have one too. How do I open it? I didn't even know I had one. Naruto shouted out his questions, making his mother raise a delicate finger to his lips, quieting him down. Not so loud, Misuko. I can tell you how to open your eye, but don't do it in front of everyone else. They don't need to know you have it until you know how to use it, she warned, making sure Naruto nodded. Here, channel your chakra in a large amount to this spot in your forehead, she said, placing 2 fingers on Naruto's forehead. Naruto's face scrunched up in adorable concentration as he focused. He's so cute. I know he's normally so much more mature, but I'm overjoyed to see he's okay with relaxing and being a child around us, Kaguya thought. Naruto channeled the chakra and felt the skin on his forehead shift. Kaguya watched as the skin on her son's forehead moved horizontally out of the way of a red eye. It had red sclerae and irides, with a ripple pattern spreading over the eyeball and 1 tomo. She smiled. It seems you will need to train to gain all your tomo, Naruto-kun. Naruto nodded, and the next moment she felt another burst of chakra from him. Surprised, she looked at him and saw nothing visibly change, his face blank for a moment before he grinned. What did you just do, Naruto-kun? She asked curiously. I activated my Byakugan and looked at my forehead. Naruto explained distractedly, obviously still happy with his new eye. It was almost like a child getting a new toy that they really wanted. Kaguya was shocked and amazed. She couldn't tell that it was his Byakugan that activated. Even hers pulsed the veins around her eyes upon being activated. That's amazing, his Byakugan doesn't visibly show the difference between on and off. That's a major advantage against enemies, Kaguya thought in amazement. The next moment she felt thoughts from her husband explaining that he had been the one to change the Otsutsuki's inherited ability into something more powerful. She nodded and sent him back a feeling of thanks, having learned to communicate in his way over the years. Naruto was still playing with his new eye when she focused back on him, opening and closing the eye and looking around with it. Mother, it's so weird being able to see out of 3 eyes, Naruto remarked, all 3 of his eyes turning and looking at her. She smiled at her son. You get used to it, Masuko. Now close it for now. We still have a few things to talk about before you wake up, Kaguya ordered. Naruto nodded and complied. Naruto's face abruptly lit up. I totally forgot about Gaara, and Temari and Kankuro. They are probably worried about me. Naruto cried, obviously upset and concerned for his friends. Is Gaara the one with the smallest amount of my power? Kaguya asked curiously. Naruto looked at her in confusion. Understanding, she explained. All 9 Biju are made up of pieces of my power that my son Hagoromo split up before his death, she explained, getting a nod. Don't worry about your friends, you can explain to them once you wake up. Asud-kun has protected your body in the real world for right now while we talk, Kaguya reassured her son. Hi, Naruto replied gratefully. Kaguya settled into a more comfortable position, gaining her son's attention. Her long white hair blew in the gentle breeze. Masuko, do you have a goal in life? You don't have to, I'm just curious, Kaguya asked, having picked up on his thoughts before he was poisoned something about wanting to create a village for those that are different. Naruto was silent for some time, staring at the ground. She patiently waited for him to speak, happy to just be near him finally. She could feel her husband's presence entirely focused on their conversation. She smiled, knowing that this was important to him as well. Asatsuri was a massive conscious, and he kept track of many things at one time, so completely getting his attention meant he either cared about something or it was important. Naruto had a solemn thinking expression as he pondered her question before answering, first entirely thinking through his life thus far and everything he had learned from his parents. Ka-san, before I answer that, what do you want me to do? My goals are not as important as yours and Two-san's, Naruto replied seriously, his maturity showing. Kaguya smiled sadly at him. Naruto-kun, while we do wish for you to eventually protect this world against the Otsutsuki with our help, that is not what I asked. Your father and I want to know your goals. Our wants can wait until you are ready, Kaguya said kindly, not sugarcoating anything. Naruto wasn't bothered by her straight-to-the-point response. He understood his purpose given to him by his parents, and was determined to complete it one day. I want to travel the world, get stronger, and eventually create a village where people like me aren't hated and feared. A place for those that want to be safe, to actually be safe. I want to be the strongest, Ka-san. So I can protect you, and those who are close to me, like Gaara and I, Temari Wani, and Kankuro Baka, he answered with determination and clarity. Kaguya smiled softly when she heard his answer. Warmth enveloped Naruto from his connection with his father, showing his approval. Do you want to bring peace to the world? She asked, and was somewhat surprised when he shook his head no. Naruto's pupilless eyes glinted, and she realized that he had thought about this a lot. That is not my desire. I do want peace, but I only desire it for myself and my people. Bringing peace to a world of people whose mindsets are all about violence is foolish. I believe in peace through sharing the same ideals and through tolerance. If we all have the same views and morals, then we will have peace. Tolerating others without provoking them, along with having the necessary power to scare and repel them should they deem our peace a threat, that is the true way to peace in my opinion, Naruto said, his face adopting a mature expression way beyond his years. His eyes spoke of knowledge to be obtained and experienced. Kaguya smiled. There is that maturity all Otsutsuki show at a young age, she thought. But isn't that a little selfish and isolated thinking? Kaguya prompted, seeing if her son was willing to defend his ideas. Naruto shook his head again and smiled at her brightly, brushing one of his bangs out of his face and over his horn. I don't believe so, Ka-san, and I know you agree with me. One cannot bring peace by forcing others to accept their views. You need to give them the chance to decide for themselves. If they truly desire peace, then they will consider what you're saying, and they will surely take a look at the peace you have created. It's their choice after that if they want to be like you or not. Kaguya nodded, a kind smile on her face. She agreed with her son entirely. It was a belief she had also formed over the thousands of years from watching the humans war and battle. You are an intelligent boy, Musuko. You will go on to do great things and protect the humans from my family, Kaguya thought, feeling an approval from her husband. I'm impressed, Naruto. That was very mature and reasonable goal, Kaguya praised. Naruto blushed and in a second was back into his childlike persona, rubbing the back of his white-haired head in embarrassment. Kaguya smiled and pulled Naruto in for another hug. Sitting him on her lap, she rubbed one of his horns. Naruto giggled at the tickling sensation. Well, I do believe Asukun has something to give you, Kaguya said, tickling Naruto some more and enticing laughter and giggles from him. She eventually stopped and set Naruto down in front of her. She smiled as she really took in what he was wearing for the first time. Naruto-kun, did you pick those clothes? She asked. Naruto suddenly looked concerned. Yeah? Are they okay? Kaguya smiled at his worry. They are great, Naruto-kun. I just thought you would like to know that you choose the traditional clothing the Otsutsuki wear without realizing it, she explained. He was confused as to how that had happened. They were both interrupted by a ping within their mind. Naruto focused once again on his father, his wants, pride, and joy. His father wanted to give him a bloodline he had invented and reserved for him expressly, never giving it to anyone else. Naruto was overjoyed and pushed his thanks and gratitude through the connection, feeling his father happy. It seems he's ready to give you the bloodline he created. He was quite proud of himself when he made it, Kaguya said teasingly, getting a mental pout from her husband, making her giggle. Naruto could feel his father connect to the plants around him once more. He watched as a large vine grew out of the ground before slowly curling around him. As it began to cover his face, he heard his mother speaking. I will see you again when you wake up, Naruto-kun. Don't talk out loud, just think it. I'm now within you, my son, Kaguya said warmly. Naruto loved seeing her smile. The next moment the vines wrapped over his eyes and his mother disappeared from view. He felt a warmth envelop him from the vines and the next moment, he fell asleep. I love you, my Musuko. 3 days later. Real world. Naruto opened his eyes and recognized the leaves and vines of his father's plants. His Byakugan activated and he looked around the room he was in. It was a hospital room, and Naruto could see Gaara asleep on a chair in the corner. Naruto smiled, touched that Gaara would be watching over him while he was talking to his parents. Naruto took a few moments, feeling how his body felt different, lighter, full of energy. Naruto connected to the plants, and they slowly unwrapped from his form, lowering him to his feet on the floor before sliding back into the walls and disappearing. Naruto turned toward Gaara, deactivating his dojutsu as he walked over and shook Gaara awake. Naruto? Naruto! Gaara jumped up in an uncharacteristic display of happiness and hugged him. Naruto smiled and returned the hug, holding it for a few moments before separating. I was so concerned. It wasn't until Shikaku explained to me that you were talking to your parents that I calmed down, Gaara explained quickly. Naruto smiled. I'm okay now, Gaara, and I did meet my parents, and I'm so glad that I did. Did Shikaku explain to you who and what I am? Naruto asked curiously. Gaara nodded, new respect in his eyes. Hey Gaara, this doesn't change anything, We are still brothers, Naruto assured. Gaara seemed to be relieved and visibly relaxed. He understood and didn't press the issue. Gaara's face suddenly took on a confused look. Shikaku wants to talk to you. He says you may not know how to do that yet though, Gaara said, evidently confused as to how Naruto was going to talk to the demon inside his head. Naruto frowned. Tusan can connect to minds, and Kasen said that I could as well, Naruto mused. Naruto, you can. Just focus on him, his feeling, his aura, extend your senses toward him and try to enter his mind, imagine it. Naruto heard his mother's harmonic voice within his head. You think my voice is beautiful, Musuko, thank you. Naruto nodded, slightly embarrassed before focusing on Gaara. He extended an open hand toward Gaara and tried to feel him. It took him a couple of moments, in which Gaara stood there patiently. Finally, he felt an opening in the walls of Gaara's mind. He could feel Gaara on the other side. Pushing farther in through the opening, he found Shikaku sitting inside a desert looking up at the sky. This must be Gaara's mindscape. All Jinchuriki have one according to Tusan. Hello Shikaku, Naruto said, appearing in the sand at the feet of the massive sand raccoon. Shikaku looked down at him, his giant eye drawing closer to Naruto's short stature. Hey, down there Naruto-sama. The Biju called out in his usual, cackling, insane voice. Please don't call me Sama, there is no need, Naruto replied. The Tanuki nodded. You must be wondering why I asked to speak to you. I want to give you my rent so to speak. Shikaku yelled loudly, confusing Naruto and making his ears ring. Rent? Naruto shouted, his ears still ringing. Yeah. All us Biju are made from pieces of Kaguya-san. When we learned she was still alive, and Kaminoki-sama had her with him, we all began creating reserves of yokai equal to what we had to give back to her upon your arrival, the crazy raccoon dog explained, his voice near deafening. Naruto looked at the giant sand creature in confusion. Yokai is different from chakra. It's more potent, and is what my power is made up from. It's what all the 9 Biju were created from, by your brother. Kaguya's voice rang out in Naruto's mind, and he nodded. What do I need to do then? Naruto asked. No clue. I know Kaguya-san has a way to absorb chakra. Zetsuji said not to worry about it, Shikaku replied, slightly quieter than before, which didn't really matter as he was so freaking loud. Naruto was confused as to who Zetsuji was but didn't worry about it. Naruto, let me control your body for a moment. I'm going to absorb Shikaku Mego's rent as he put it, Kaguya said and chuckled at her grandchild's antics. Naruto nodded before allowing his mother to control his body. Gaara appeared in the sand at that moment, a short way off to Naruto's left. Oh, hey Gaara, what took you so long? Naruto asked. He apparently still had control over his voice, and his mother waited until he was done. Well, I wasn't sure you had succeeded in connecting until I heard Shikaku yelling, Gaara commented dryly. Shikaku grinned. I tried to come into my mind but it's rather difficult to do when Shikaku is shouting. But I heard everything. Naruto nodded, okay Ka-san, when you are ready. Naruto turned back to the giant raccoon, feeling his mother raise his arms toward Shikaku. Shikaku grinned maniacally, and pushed all his reserves to the surface in front of him to be absorbed. Naruto felt his third eye open, and he suddenly gained another field of vision that mixed with his other two, allowing him a more significant range of natural sight. His younger Rinne Sharingan spun, and Naruto found himself emitting words that were not his own. Fujitsu-kyuin. Naruto's third eye spun faster. Gaara watched on the side in amazement as a see-through barrier formed around Naruto, drawing light brown yokai into him at a rapid pace from Shikaku. The process took only a few moments before Naruto lowered his hands, canceling the flow from Shikaku, who was panting dramatically. Gaara rolled his eyes at Shikaku's love for the dramatics. Dang, losing half of my entire yokai is no joke. Naruto gave a small bow. My apologies, but thank you for your contribution to my mother, Naruto said politely. As he stood back up, Gaara noticed that another tomo had formed in Naruto's third eye, giving him 2. The horizontal eyelid closed a moment later. See you back outside, Gaara? Naruto said, looking at his friend. Gaara nodded, and Naruto disappeared from the seal. Regaining control of his body's senses, Naruto stepped back as Gaara's glazed eyes regained their focus. So, what will you do now, Naruto and I? Gaara asked curiously. Naruto shrugged. I want to explore the elemental nations, gain experience and power, and eventually create my own village. But I don't want to leave my friends either, Naruto mused out loud. He stopped when he suddenly sensed someone approaching down the hall. Seems someone is coming, shall we go? Naruto proposed. Gaara silently nodded, and they moved toward the window. It was opened by Gaara's sand, and they both slipped out. As they fell, they were both caught by their own protections and deposited on the ground before they took off at a run toward the Kazekage mansion. The medic stepped into the room to check on the demon's condition and dropped his clipboard when he found the place entirely empty. Quickly turning around, he ran off to report to the Kazekage that Naruto was now awake. Naruto and Gaara reached the mansion a few moments later, opening the large doors and entering. Gaara? Is that you? Temari's voice echoed out of the living room doorway before Temari herself stepped through. Naruto! She shouted, dashing across the greeting area and giving Naruto a hug, almost knocking the smaller boy over. Hey Temari Wani, good to see you too, Naruto said after he regained his breath from being bowled into by the hyper-blonde. We were so worried about you. I was going to beat up that guy that poisoned you, but Temari trailed off, unsure how to continue. Naruto separated himself from her hug and gave Gaara a look. You killed him, didn't you? Gaara didn't visibly respond, but Naruto knew he was right. You didn't have to do that, Naruto sighed, running a hand through his white locks. But thank you for looking out for me. Naruto smiled. Temari had an uncertain look on her face but got over it as Gaara smiled. Flashback. As the moon shone down over the village, a roof lit up from the reflected moonlight, and a figure carrying a large gourd could be made out. A bloodthirsty grin was on his face as he looked out at the village in front of him. You will pay for hurting Naruto and I, he yelled, leaping off the roof. He was helped through the air by the sand. Running along the rooftops, he channeled chakra to his nose like Baki-sensei taught him, searching for the scent of the man that had poisoned he and Naruto. Gaara had just left the hospital, having stayed there late into the night after Naruto had been cocooned in vines. Once he was sure that Naruto was okay, he'd left by the window to find the man who had dared try to kill his brother. It took Gaara a couple of hours with the help of Shikaku to find the man. The man had quite the head start, as Gaara had told him almost 7 hours earlier that he was going to come back and kill him. Gaara finally locked onto his scent and followed it into a darker part of the village. Dropping down to the street, he slowly walked toward the battered hotel he knew the man was in. A few villagers saw his bloodthirsty eyes and maniacal smile, and quickly hightailed it out of there. As he walked, 2 drunk men noticed him. "Hey kid! Hand us your money, and you won't get hurt," one laughed, downing more sake from a bottle and holding a blade in his other hand. Gaara ignored him, intent on his prey. The man didn't like being ignored and threw his knife at Gaara. It didn't get even close to him before being grabbed in midair by the sand. Gaara's savage green eyes turned toward the man. Looking over his shoulder, he raised his right hand toward the men, his grin becoming more and more insane. Within the seal, Shikaku tried to calm the boy down, but gave it up as a lost cause. He didn't really care if the idiots died. Morons deserved it anyway for picking a fight with Gaara. "Die!" Gaara yelled, his sand slithering quickly across the ground before wrapping around the men faster than they could react. Gaara's eyes grew more full, more bloodthirsty, more insane. "Yes. They will all pay." "Sabaku-Q, sand coffin!" Gaara snarled demonically, his sand compressing down on the struggling and now screaming men. "Sabaku-Soso, sand burial!" Gaara's eyes stretched as he closed his hand. The sand imploded fiercely, blood flying onto the walls of the nearby buildings. Gaara didn't bat an eye. In fact, he seemed to almost relish it as he retracted his sand back into his gourd, resuming his stalking of the prey. Within the 5th floor of the hotel, the waiter named Daikoto was trembling and pale as a sheet. He had seen Gaara kill those men without mercy, and Gaara was unquestionably coming for him. There was no escape. Gaara was already reaching the front of the hotel, and there was no other way that he could get out. "Oh God, what have I done?" the man murmured in fear, Gaara disappearing from his view into the building. A moment later he heard cries and crashing from below him. He cowered in the corner of his hotel room, shaking horribly. "I know you are here!" A crazed voice echoed down the halls of the hotel. He whimpered in fear, cowering further into the corner. You dared to attack someone precious to me." The crazy voice was closer now. A moment later a door could be heard exploding violently on the floor below. Come out wherever you are. The sand wants your blood." The voice rang out, almost singing. Daikoto could feel himself going mad from fear. He wanted to die. The killing intent saturating the air was nearly as strong as the Ichibi's, and it was wholly directed at him. He could literally feel himself going insane. "Found you!" a demonic voice cried out gleefully. The next moment his door was shattered to pieces. Standing in the hall was the bloodthirsty Gaara, staring at him with wide, bloodshot eyes. Daikoto was foaming at the mouth, pressed as far as he could against the wall. Daikoto suddenly decided to throw himself from the window, uncaring if he died or not, just wanting to escape the pressure, the killing intent weighing down on him, making him watch his own death over and over again. "You will not escape me!" Gaara cried, his sand shooting across the hotel room, covering the walls and reaching Daikoto as he attempted to get the window open frantically. He screamed as the sand wrapped around him, pulling him away from the window and back toward Gaara, who had his palm extended toward him. "Sabaku-Soso, sand burial!" Gaara closed his palm, a massive grin on his face as the sand crushed down on the screaming form of Daikoto. The next moment the pressure built to extremes and the sand exploded in a fountain of blood, covering Gaara and the walls of the hotel. Gaara panted heavily, feeling satisfaction at having avenged his friend. He slowly regained his composure, turned, walked back down the halls and out of the hotel. "Gaara, when you go home and get a new change of clothes, we need to talk." The uncharacteristically serious voice of Shikaku sounded in his head. Gaara nodded and continued making his way home. End flashback. Naruto and Gaara were now sitting in the living room, both sitting cross-legged and making the ram seal. Temari sat on a nearby couch, watching the 2 motionless boys sit on the carpet with their eyes closed. They had been doing this for almost a half hour after Naruto came back, saying hi to Kankuro and explaining what happened when he got poisoned. He also said that all his questions had been answered while he was in the coma, Temari thought, though when Kankuro had asked him what he meant he declined to explain further. Directly after that, both boys moved into the living room and sat down, and had been there since. Temari was bored and was just about to get up and find something else to do when Naruto and Gaara stirred at the exact same time, which was slightly creepy. You didn't explain how that will work out, Gaara suddenly said, confusing Temari greatly. She became only more confused by Naruto's answer. I'm still working out a solution, I need time to think, Naruto replied, slowly walking away, his white kimono fluttering lightly. Gaara nodded in response. Gaara, what the heck was that about? Temari near shouted at her brother. Gaara's blank green eyes turned to her. Naruto and I has finally found the truth to his life and is deciding what to do with his life from now on, Gaara replied cryptically. Wait. Does this mean he is leaving? Temari asked, shocked. Gaara shrugged. Perhaps. He doesn't know yet. Temari shook her head. What was that thing you two just did for the past 30 minutes? Gaara stood and walked past her toward the entrance. A thing, Gaara said as he walked by, making her face fall at her brother's new love for being confusing as. The hot blistering sun of the desert shone on Suna, beating down mercilessly upon the residents' heads. One white-haired boy was not at all bothered by this though. While he didn't like the bright sun, preferring the moon, the warmth was nice. Naruto Otsutsuki Kaminoki was sitting on the roof of the Kazekage mansion, his activated dojutsu staring blankly out over the village and down one of the main streets where villagers moved to and fro. The villagers were always giving the Kazekage mansion an even wider berth than they did before he came to live here. Questions, it truly is the recurring theme in my life, Naruto decided. He was at an impasse. A large part of him wanted to just leave Suna and go out and learn, experience, find his nieces and nephews, and then create his own village. On the opposite hand, he didn't want to leave his friends and miss growing up with them in the academy. It had been 3 days since he had woken up from his coma, and he had since put all his thought into this. His father had told him that when he reached the second level of his bloodline, he would be able to form a unique style of cloning himself. But that wouldn't be for some time. Ka-san suggested like 8 different types of clones for me to use, but none would last long enough or survive any sort of hit. Baki would surely realize, Naruto mused. Kaguya hummed to herself within her son's mind, allowing him to figure out how he wanted to go about this in his own way. She only offered her advice and opinion when he asked for it because she wanted him to grow on his own. I'll always be here for him when he needs me though. Naruto mused. Getting up, he walked to the other side of the roof, looking down at where he'd already seen Gaara practicing earlier. Naruto extended his hand and beamed toward Gaara, slowing his breathing and opening a gateway between them. Gaara and I, can you hear me? Naruto thought. On the ground below, Gaara stopped and turned, looking up at him with scrunched eyes. Yes, and I-san, was his near monotone reply. Naruto smiled. He was getting better at this slowly. I've had a thought, something I want your opinion on. The only thing keeping me in this village is you, and I don't want to leave you. I want to suggest that we both leave the village, Naruto started. Gaara gave him a curious look but remained silent, waiting for him to continue. I'm not saying abandon your siblings, but that we go out ahead to make a better place. Once we have made our own village, they could come to us if they want, Naruto finished, watching as Gaara looked back down at the ground and thought about it. At that moment, Temari walked out of the house. Gaara, what did you do with the TV remote again? She asked loudly. Gaara turned to his sister, and they began talking. I'll think about it, Anai-san, was Gaara's reply over the link before he wholly focused on his semi-enraged sister. Naruto nodded, turning back to the village and forcing his vision to zoom across it, seeing everything. Naruto sighed. Ka-san, Tu-san, I am ready to begin my training now. Naruto could feel his mother smile in his mindscape. Okay. You need a place to train where no one will find you. The people of this village will try to catch you and replicate your bloodline if they learn how powerful it is, Kaguya instructed. Naruto nodded and vaulted off the roof, using chakra to empower his limbs as Baki had taught him. Sometime later he came to the wall of Sunagakure, the high sand cliffs that towered around the village, and gave it protection against invaders. Jumping as high as he could, he was met by his plants reaching out from the wall, forming platforms to help him continue to leap higher and higher up. He finally reached the top and climbed into a spacious, open flat area. I really need to learn how to walk on surfaces, Naruto mused. Baki hadn't taught them that yet. Sit down, Naruto-kun, and I will explain your bloodline in more detail, Kaguya ordered. The white-haired boy nodded. Now, there is a range of techniques that you can use in the first level of your bloodline, and you can develop more. Kaguya switched into a mother lecture voice, like the one your mother gets when she's explaining how to use the stove for the first time. There are 3 levels to this bloodline, and you are currently at level 1. You may have noticed when you woke up that you felt different. Naruto nodded. Now that he thought about it, he had felt different, but he couldn't describe the feeling. There are many things you can do with this level, but I will start with 2 basics. The first is your ability to dissolve yourself into chakra, which has 2 forms, and the second is your ability to create things out of chakra. These two techniques don't have a name because, honestly, we have never bothered to give them any, Kaguya lectured, getting a mental nod from her horned child. Now, as you know, you aren't human. Due to your father, you are already mostly an entity of chakra that has taken a physical form that looks like a Otsutsuki. Naruto raised an interested eyebrow at this. That reminds me of the Biju, living entities of chakra, he mused. Kaguya nodded. That's because you are very similar to them. This bloodline is easier for you to use because of that, and it would be easier for them to use as well. Though your Tusan has refused to give it to them. Kaguya chuckled at that, remembering the five-tailed monkey begging on hands and knees dramatically. Anyway, this bloodline, at its basics, allows you to switch between your chakra entity-like form and your physical form much easier than you would be able to do otherwise. If this bloodline were given to a human, they wouldn't survive it without a Biju in them or some other large chakra source. They would also go through intense pain when they move to the second level, as well as releasing a chakra pulse large enough to alert the entire elemental nations. Kaguya continued on in her lecture, Naruto quietly absorbing what his mother was teaching him. So, one of the abilities you gain distinctly from this bloodline is your ability to construct objects out of your chakra. This is helped along by the extreme control over chakra that you attain from this bloodline. In fact, you will never have to do chakra control exercises no matter how much chakra you have, Kaguya explained, feeling Naruto's excitement. Naruto had already gone through some intense chakra control under Baki just to be able to use any jutsu, and he didn't like it. He'd found he had enormous reserves for his age. Though once he awakens his Rinnegan that wouldn't have mattered anyway, Kaguya mused. Using this ability, you can create almost anything out of your chakra, whether it be clothes, weapons, or things you can throw, as long as you know what the object looks like. Kaguya continued, this skill was inspired by the Rinnegan's creation of all things technique, but you won't be able to create living beings or the actual materials of objects like the Rinnegan can. Also, if you master your bloodline, you can use it in replacement of the normal ninjutsu and genjutsu that shinobi use. Instead, you will use moves that utilize chakra in its purest form and control to achieve similar effects. This bloodline allows you to do massive amounts of damage and not use up nearly any chakra at all. The last thing for right now, I want you to will yourself to dissolve into chakra. If it works, your body will melt, and you will become a cloud composed of chakra, Kaguya ordered. Naruto stood, concentrating on making his body dissolve as his mother wanted. A couple of minutes later, Naruto's focused expression became calm, and he slowly started to vaporize from the legs up into black and white chakra, dissipating into the air like smoke. The smog didn't move and hovered right where Naruto had been. Excellent, Naruto! Kaguya praised. Okay, now attempt to rematerialize, she ordered, carefully watching Naruto's body from the inside. This technique is extremely useful as it teleports a person away by dissolving their body into chakra. While effective and useful, it has a nasty side effect if done wrong. There is a chance to lose parts of one's body. But Kaguya was confident that her son would figure it out, he was already brilliant. She still wanted to have some fun at his expense though. A moment later the smoke started condensing into a roughly humanoid form the size of Naruto. Once it solidified, Kaguya broke out laughing at what she could see. Naruto's head was coming out of his left shoulder, while his left arm was coming out of his neck. His right leg was coming out of his spine and his right arm out of his left leg socket. Basically, it didn't really work. Hey! What happened to me? Naruto freaked out as he tried to move, which just resulted in him falling down on his face, arm, elbow. Oh, that was priceless. Ha ha. Kaguya nearly rolled around on the floor of the mindscape, just barely keeping her dignity. She was unable to contain her laughter at Naruto's expense, who was quite stuck and doing his best to send his mother a mental glare from his awkward position. It's okay, Naruto-kun, it will take a while to get this right, Kaguya chuckled. Channeling her potent yokai through Naruto's body, she took temporary control of him and dissolved his body back into smoke. A moment later he reformed correctly. Naruto breathed deeply for a couple of moments. That was so weird, but really cool. Naruto yelled excitedly. Kaguya just smiled at her son, enjoying another one of his childish outbursts. Naruto was about to try it again when Kaguya stopped him. Naruto-kun, wait on that for now. I want to teach you the other form of this ability. Naruto stopped concentrating on dissolving himself and stood straight, waiting for his mother to continue. Naruto, focus on two strands. These two strands rotate around each other over and over again. Feel the motion and allow your feeling to flow. This is the secret to the bloodline.